Jungle.
Hello, you are listening to Trump Republic Radio. It is December 17th, 2017. I'm your host, Enzo Quesada, and as always, I'm joined by my co-host, Bobby Hester.
Hello, everyone.
And this week on the show for the guest spot, we have on someone that we've known for, I guess, a couple months now. Someone that we're helping run for Congress, and that is Eric Burkhart.
Hi, guys. Happy holidays.
Happy holidays, indeed. So before we get into what we're talking about this week, and we have a lot to go into, we do want to pitch out how you can donate for Eric Burkhart. Because, we personally know the politics situation in a lot of places in this country, race by race. But we understand the races around ourselves much better. And knowing everyone in the race for Congress, in the seat, there's a lot of swampy stuff heading in, but Eric Burkhart is not swampy at all. So, we've had him on the show, we've interviewed him before, and it's important that he does well in this race. If you like the stuff that we talk about on Trump Public Radio, you definitely want Eric Burkhart in Congress. But you got the link for that, Bobby?
I do have the link, and it will also be in the description of the episode. You can look at it, but I'll just read it off here really quickly. It is crowdpack.com/campaigns/319294/Eric-Burkhart. Again, that will be in the description of the box. And please, if you have even just $5, if you donate that to him, the more names that are on there shows that he has the more support.
Yeah.
And that leads to endorsements and opportunities that you won't even believe will have that possibility. So if you liked our interview with Eric Burkhart, which we'll also have the link to that in the description of this, when we first interviewed him, which I suggest you should go back and listen to. Very informative. He's a very good guy. That will be down there as well. So
cool. But with that said, let's get into what we're talking about. And the first thing we're going to talk about is something that's been on everyone's mind, but we've actually talked about already this week. And that is how the Alabama special election went back on Tuesday.
Yes, a Democrat finally got elected in Alabama after decades.
It was something like 3 decades.
About 30 years. Doug Jones beat Roy Moore in Alabama. As we said, we talked about this on the midweek episode in grave detail for over an hour.
It was about 45 minutes, actually.
Was it only about 45 minutes? But
we could have went longer, but I did want to keep it
We did very
condensed.
in-depth analysis during that. So because of that, we're not going to go as in-depth right now.
I think one thing that we do need to highlight again is the irregularities that we saw in these voting districts.
Absolutely.
Yes.
They are insane numbers that just don't seem possible. As people that watch this closely, when you see numbers like this, it makes you worried. And like Bobby, you're talking about how you see these kind of numbers in accounting. You're supposed to have skepticism.
You're supposed to have professional skepticism.
This gives you a lot of skepticism.
It's not to automatically come out and believe that everything you see is fraudulent. It's to say, it seems like there's something not fully correct here. I should investigate this further. That's the entire purpose of the job career that I'm going into.
Now, I know you did the numbers to very extensive detail on how this went. Could you tell us again the kind of strange irregularities that we saw?
Of course. So during the election last year, Trump won Alabama. He beat Hillary Clinton by a margin of 28 points.
Yeah.
For Alabama, that's perfectly normal. That's about how it always is going to be in a deep red state like that.
One of the most red states in the country.
It's an R plus 12 state. People have been saying it's R plus 20. It's only R plus 12.
Yeah.
But even so, R
still
plus 12, extremely red. Across the board, you saw, and I looked at the county by county results. I have a spreadsheet that has the 2016 vote totals, the 2017 vote totals, comparison numbers, everything. Across the board, almost every single county shows a Republican Party drop-off of about 50%. And that's, some are 43%, some are 55%, but all around the around 50%
Which
range.
is a degree to be expected.
Yeah, and for a special election in an off year, that's about what you would expect. You'd see about half the turnout that you normally see. However, the Democrats only had an 8% drop-off from 2016 across the board.
Yeah.
Having, in a deep red state, to get 92% of the Democrats that came out to vote for Hillary Clinton to vote in that, I don't believe it.
Yeah.
And also, they're saying that Doug Jones, a basic average Democrat white guy, got a higher black turnout than Barack Obama did in 2008 and 2012.
Yeah.
No way. There were some counties that showed the Democrat got more votes this time around than last year.
Yeah, there was districts where you saw Doug Jones receive more votes than Hillary Clinton.
No way. And also...
And I understand that, like, this election had a lot of eyes on it. They're talking about this internationally. But this turnout is still unheard of.
Well, those eyes should have impacted both parties, and Judge Moore had galvanized the Republican vote to some extent as well, because people in Alabama don't like carpetbaggers coming into the state and trying to impact their electoral process. But those statistics that you point out, the one thing that is most disturbing about it is the complete lack of interest in those irregularities by the mainstream media, the mainstream press, and our illustrious Republican Party, who was so anxious to see Judge Moore lose that they probably breathed a sigh of relief. At the end of the day, we have a Democrat sitting in Congress now, which isn't going to help any conservative. And on top of that, we have shown the Democrats a new method on how to impact elections. There's nothing that bothers me more than watching video after video of people talking about coming across state lines to vote. That in itself should cause some alarm. And another reason why the country should have rallied behind President Trump's effort to clean up the political electoral mess. He did put together a group that was going cross-country to investigate electoral irregularities.
The Voter Fraud Commission.
Yes, the Voter Fraud Commission, and the Democrats had just scuttled it every step of the way, using their typical tools of victimization, accusations of racism, and distraction. The American people deserve a free and fair electoral process. Our country is worth that. But we aren't going to have it if we can't keep it clean.
No, I absolutely agree. And, one of the other things I was wanting to say about the whole Alabama situation in regards to what you're exactly saying about voter fraud is, there is that video that's now kind of gone viral at a Doug Jones election party where there is a guy who's being interviewed by the lady from one of the local stations there. And he walks up and says, "Yeah, we got people to come out all across the country to come out and vote and canvass for Doug Jones." If all he had come out and to say is like campaign for, that's one thing. But to say vote as well, I don't think that was actually a slip up. I think he legitimately meant it.
It's not difficult to do. The Democrats have done a very good job of compiling voter lists,
right,
and registering people who don't have to be there to be registered.
That's why the canvassing part is
exactly
important to keep in
They have
mind.
a list of names, and whatever body they stick to that name it doesn't matter when you don't have voter ID regulation. You can have someone who lives in Tennessee come across the state line and become that person who you can't find and actually take to the polls.
Yeah, it really reminds me, you remember the Project Veritas stuff, Bobby. Mm-hmm. James O'Keefe, during his, thing, he was talking to Scott Fogle and Bob Creamer, and they were pitching like a hypothetical, like, hey, let's do some voter fraud. Like, how would we do that? And they talked about how you just canvass people and you get like, oh, these are the people that we've registered to vote in the area. And then we can get people out of state. We can issue them IDs from a company that we just created to give them a pay stub. Because all you need is an ID given to you. The company can give you an ID.
Right.
And then they give you the pay stub. And what they would do is, everyone's on the lookout for buses, the big buses thing. And, maybe there was buses, maybe there wasn't buses in Alabama, but you don't need buses to do this.
Just get people to drive.
You could just pay people to take their own cars, and then they can go out of state, into state to vote, and they want to do this anyways, and you can pay them to do it. So when he's talking about we got people out to canvass and we got people out to vote, the canvassing part is part of the process to get them to vote from out of state.
And you were talking about voter ID. I looked up just now the Alabama's voter ID laws, and a voter has to show an ID, but here's the type of IDs they can show. Valid driver's license of the state of Alabama, a valid non-driver identification card, a valid Alabama photo ID, or a valid state-issued ID from Alabama or any other state.
Yeah.
So you could show an out-of-state ID.
And it'd still work.
And it would
as long
work.
as it's registered.
Exactly. Or a valid federal issued ID, passport, employee ID from the government's military IDs.
Like the video I was talking about. They take this whole plot. They're talking to Scott Fogle and Robert Creamer. We're gonna do some voter fraud, and they pitch it to a guy who is a dreamer, who obviously knows they're talking about getting illegals to vote in the election, and he's down with it. This is not something that doesn't happen. This obviously happens, and this is obviously an election that mattered to them. And the places where they have the least, foresee over watching voter fraud happening is places that want it to happen, which is the inner cities of Alabama. And that's why you saw such a huge turnout.
If you were going to commit voter fraud, you would do it in a place where there is a larger issue that is hanging over the election so that people will not investigate your concerns.
Right.
And the overriding issue of this election were these accusations from 30 years ago against Judge Moore. And, I really, where does the obligation come from an individual to make some sort of timely, effort to talk about these things before someone's running for national office? That's a real problem for me. I'm real skeptical of people who show up only when it matters. 30 and 40 years later, I don't remember things from 30 years ago, for goodness sake.
Yeah.
But these people are remembering dates and locations and the color of socks and then, of course, just as we saw with Trump, some of these stories started falling apart just before the election. There's a lot of questions about whether or not Judge Moore was a victim of not only the Democrats, but the establishment of the Republican Party as well.
And something else I wanted to mention, they were expecting there to only be about 20% turnout in this race. They got 40%.
Yeah.
You know how many complaints they got? And when I say that, I mean they had staff for 20%.
Yeah.
You know how many complaints they got statewide for saying there's more people than we expected to turn out? 0.
Even though we're talking about, in these places where the Democrats are doing polling, you expect 20% turnout, and they got 92%, apparently.
No. I'm saying 20% of registered voters
yes.
were expected to vote. 40%.
In Alabama.
Yes. But they got 40% out. So if you have staff ready to deal with 100 people, but 200 people show up, you can't deal with that.
And that was even higher in the blue districts. That's what I'm saying.
Exactly. Mm. And also, I wanted to say Okay, go ahead.
I don't want to only be conspiracy theory guy, okay? I understand what they're doing in these communities. The black vote is what was really high and abnormal. They go into the churches and they, get these people to work together. They're having, barbecues and, huge.
They have a great get the vote
you're allowed
out.
to do that. Mm-hmm. And, it was good on their part.
Our side needs to do that, too.
Yeah,
we need to have fucking barbecues.
If you want to win elections.
On Election Day.
Well... it's like what I say about Texas State and why we don't see more students involved in Republican politics from from the university. There are people that have to work and feed their families, and they have obligations and responsibilities, and sometimes it doesn't leave you a lot of time to do other things. And at the end of the day, your real obligation is to vote. And, the more and more money that comes from left causes and left organizations, the more they are able to bring people into these elections to work and put things together like barbecues and parties and, registration events. And, you just don't see it as much on our side. And I think it's because people are out living their lives.
I think so too.
But I think that you can't be negligent to the point where you don't realize the repercussions on the life that you want to live because you let an election go by. Like, I don't think that's excusable.
It's not.
If you want to consider yourself someone that has principles, you should have the principle of you are the watchdog over your own community and your country. And I don't know, this is, like Bobby said, this is something we need to be better on. If we want to win seats in 2018, and that's very possible we can do that in a lot of places, we can win a lot of senator races if we do this stuff right. But we need that same level of commitment that they had.
And, even like you were saying, a lot of people are just living their lives. Even so, throw a barbecue in a heavy Republican area. Get everybody out to vote. There's going to be at least one person there that is going to have some free time and say, sure, I'll go to your barbecue.
We have a problem with the Republican establishment as well that is willing in too many instances to accept a Democrat victory.
Yeah.
As long as nobody's going to rock the boat. If you take a look at my election, you've got 18 candidates that have jumped into this, what I call the opportunity sweepstakes. Before Lamar Smith resigned, there were 2 candidates, me and Lamar Smith, and now there are 18. And it's a question of 1 outsider and 17 establishment career politicians. And the people who vote in that election are going to be Republican voters. It's going to be up to them. They will make the decision on whether or not they want to send another career politician to D.C. who wants to be the next 20-year incumbent, who will access all the resources up there to put together $4 million to make sure that no middle-income American can participate in the process. And that, my friends, is from the Republican establishment. And it's something we do have to fix. It's not rocket science. People have to make that decision. Do you want business as usual, or do you want real change? You want to control the political process, or do you want to keep it in the hands of a small elite who are never going to rock the boat when it matters?
Yeah. And, just think about what happened with this election that we're talking about, okay? Remember Jeff Flake sending a $100,000 check to Doug Jones?
100. It was just $100.
It was just 100. But still, he's a sitting Republican senator that did that.
Oh, I thought it was 100,000 too.
It was just $100.
I know Ed McMullen also donated to Doug Jones, and he's supposed to be this big bastion of conservatism.
Well, a lot of people took it as an opportunity to bash Steve Bannon because Steve Bannon had committed himself to Judge Moore, and you know what that told me? That told me that Steve Bannon has integrity, because he wasn't. Somewhere along the line, due process has to come into play, and there was no due process for Judge Moore, none whatsoever. Now, if Hollywood and the left want to crucify their own people over there without due process, that's their business. But this was one of our guys, okay? And there were people making accusations against him that were from 30 and 40 years ago. And some of these accusations were, he was 32 years old and I was 20. But for the grace of God, there go I. In our communities now, there are people from different ages that date. The real issue here was there criminal activity, and if so, if it didn't raise to the extent of where the authorities were going to investigate it, then why are we talking about it?
Yeah. Me and Bobby have been saying this from the beginning, the stuff that is being accused of Roy Moore isn't what they're making it out to be to begin with, okay? We're going back, hypothetically, 30 years ago. He just got out of the war. He was in his 30s. He was in a place to, actually be, a a good significant influence in his community. He had his life put together, and he was just looking for a woman to be his wife. Okay, this is a Christian guy who just wanted a young virgin woman that would be his wife, and he was going around and he was meeting these women to see if they'd be good for that.
Literally nothing more than like going to a movie or going to dinner.
And this is how he found his actual wife. Mm-hmm. That he's been committed to the entire time. That there's never been allegations that he's cheated on this woman. But we're supposed to believe that he's of this extreme and pure like nature.
Well, you notice
like just in like the realm of like history, this wouldn't be considered a weird thing at all.
No.
Well, especially
today's standards more so, but I just,
there were very few allegations made against Judge Moore that had to do with no consent, and that's another issue I have. People were making complaints about things that happened that involved two consenting adults, and I don't want to know what consenting adults do in the privacy of their bedroom. It's their business, 30 years ago or now. And if someone regrets something they did with Judge Moore 40 years ago, that should have no bearing whatsoever on his character or on this election.
But like for me, you bring it to there, you're not really voting for his past, you're voting for how he's going to vote in the Senate. And you look at how he would have voted for people in Alabama, I don't think they'd be disappointed with how he's going to vote.
Oh, absolutely not. He's as Alabama as you can get. And I would not have been disappointed with how he was going to vote because he's true to his convictions. Even people that maybe disagree with some of what he believes in, something, at least you know what you're getting. Mm-hmm. He is absolutely true to his convictions from the day that he was on the Supreme Court and we had that big scandal involving the Ten Commandments. It's real tragedy that this had to happen, and he had to be a victim in this mess.
And there's one more thing I kind of wanted to say when going back to what I was talking about voter fraud, or potential voter fraud, that is.
Yeah.
We know that voter fraud tends to happen most in extremely heavily Democrat areas. There's reports back from, we have stories that we talked about. There was a couple of poll workers in Detroit who got arrested for taking Hillary Clinton ballots and running them through the machine 6 times in Detroit. Stuff like that happens all over. Back in 2012, people were saying that there were areas where, in certain precincts in Philadelphia, where Mitt Romney got 0 votes.
Yeah.
Even some, he would get at least 1 or 2.
Sure.
And, I was thinking the same thing happens here. You look at a map of Alabama, you can see there's a blue belt right down the middle. And that's your heavily Democrat areas. But I wanted to read this. And it says, quote, and this is from the Alabama Secretary of State website. In addition, a voter who does not have a valid voter ID in his or her possession at the polls shall be permitted to vote if the individual is positively identified by 2 election officials as a voter on the poll list who is eligible to vote, and the election officials sign a sworn affidavit so stating.
So they just got to claim that he's
good?
So
all you got to do is have just 2 people there to be like, yeah, that's who they says they are. Sure, I'll let them do it.
There's so many questions about this election. And, I guess at this point what we need to do is learn from it and try and stay ahead of the game. The Democrats... I remember once someone asked me how I felt about Hillary Clinton, and I told them that from what little personal experience I had dealing with her, that I felt that she was a sociopath, someone who believes that the ends justifies the means.
Yeah.
Well, that is the Democratic Party today. The ends justifies the means. And that's why they have had such success recently in registering and getting people, if you want to call it that, to vote.
Well, I wanted to point out one more thing, and that comes to, let's say that everything in this election was legitimate.
Yeah.
The vote totals are 100% accurate.
Yeah.
2 things, there's multiple things you can take out of this, but 2 things I want to highlight. Number 1, do not let your people not vote.
Yeah.
Get your people out to vote. This election, if that's truly the reason why he lost, is because Republicans didn't show up, you need to get your people out to vote.
What was the point of not
be
voting?
Complacent. And also, number 2, don't allow dissenting third-party votes.
Yeah.
I hate to say that. The same thing happened here. Doug Jones won that election by 21,000 votes. There were 22,000 write-in votes there.
Yeah.
that is enough to sway that election.
Boy, that was an interesting statistic.
And there were several states in 2016, Minnesota being one of them, where if you take the number of libertarian votes, which, I mean, for the most part, people who voted libertarian in the last election that weren't actual, like, hardcore libertarians.
They were Republicans.
They were Republicans who didn't want to vote for Trump. That's the reason why Trump only won Texas by 9 points.
Yeah.
Because if you add Gary Johnson in Texas got almost 4%. Libertarians in Texas usually get about 1 to 1.5 per election cycle. You take an extra 2%, you add that on to what Trump got in the state, suddenly you're winning not by 9%, you're winning by 11%. And that is just, and that's on the low end of normal in Texas for margin of victory. But the point I want to get to is, we lost Minnesota because of that. We lost New Hampshire. Well, I personally believe we lost New Hampshire due to voter fraud.
But also
write-ins. Any state where neither candidate got more than 50% is a state where third-party votes could have decided.
There were multiple states during the election that, if they just voted Trump, we could have won them.
Yeah, if you just got the people who were like, a lot of them were Ted Cruz people. I hate to say it. A lot of them were Ted Cruz people. They were like...
My mom wrote in Ted Cruz. My dad wrote in Paul Ryan. Like, I know these people.
It's retarded. But, there are a lot of people out there who are Republicans who support Republican conservative causes who did not like Trump. Huh. And because of that, they decided to not vote for him, but vote third party or not vote at all.
And us on the right, we have, like, this, like, bigger, like... desire to write in.
Yeah. And so the point that I'm getting to is, don't allow your people to vote third party. I don't care if you hate the person. And you know what? I don't even care if you're more of a libertarian than a Republican or whatever. The alternative is a Democrat, okay?
Yeah.
And I know it's more so than just party labels. There's a lot of, liberals and socialists.
Well, this is the thing that we always just go back to. Like, politics is war by another means, and you have to remember your enemy understands that this is a war.
Yes,
and I think a lot of people on the right don't think it is. But if you lose the war, like, you lose your future. You can lose anything potentially.
And Eric, what you were saying about how, what you were saying earlier about how the Democrats, to them, it's the ends justify the means. I don't want to necessarily say that that's the way we should be playing the game, but we definitely need to change the way that we're playing. Otherwise, we're going to be losing. If the enemy is cheating too, and they're winning, they're not playing by the rules. So you playing by the rules is only going to make it.
If you know that's happening.
And I'm not saying cheat. I'm saying is you need to change the way that you're doing it.
Yeah.
There's a lot of questions being asked regarding the write-in candidate issue as well, because that figure was changing and going up and down all night long in a very bizarre way, and it led people to believe that they were looking to determine exactly how many write-in votes they needed to actually impact the final count, which is something else that disturbs me as well. But traditionally the Democrats and the left are the ones that have all of these splinter parties that draw a lot of votes away from their national candidates. And now we suffered from that in the Trump election. You guys are exactly right, because of people voting for Gary Johnson and the guy in Utah, whatever his name was, the ex-CIA guy.
Ed McMullen, get 20% of the vote in Utah.
Well, he was a setup from the Democrats. They wanted to take away the
financed by Bill Kristol.
Votes. Yeah, they wanted to take away the electoral votes from Trump. Anyways, I think we've pretty much shot that subject full of shotgun shells.
I kind of don't want to go any longer on Roy Moore, but I want to say,
since we talked about it already.
I want to say in final, it's not one thing that did this election.
No,
it's a lot of different things.
Nope.
Was there voter fraud? Probably, but that wasn't the ultimate deciding factor. Was it third-party people? Somewhat, but also that there's so many different things. Was he a bad candidate to a degree? Yes.
He was a
Should he have campaigned differently? Yes. I admit these things. Am I disappointed with how things went? Yes. Did I expect him to win for sure? Yes. So that's why it is jarring to, because we both predicted a good win. I predicted 6 points.
I was predicting about 8 or 8 to 10.
About 8 points. it just seems weird. But I think we need to remember that this is just a strange election. This is not going to be every single election in 2018.
This is not any indication of a blue wave coming in.
This is a freak show election to a strange degree. But
it's not a referendum on
from
Trump. If anything, it was a referendum on Roy Moore.
Yeah. So with that, I think we should move on to the next thing.
Yeah, go ahead.
I know this is something you got, the pipe bomb incident in New York City.
Yes. Earlier this week, there was a pipe bomb attack in New York City. Thank God no one was killed.
Yeah.
There were 4 people injured, however. But this would happen. This Bangladeshi man, reportedly inspired by ISIS, we haven't actually 100% confirmed that, however, set off a pipe bomb inside a Port Authority bus terminal during rush hour. Now, if you've never been to New York City, or you're familiar or not familiar with the New York City subway, I've been there once, and I understood what they were talking about here. You have, hundreds and hundreds of subway stations. Those subway stations themselves obviously connect above ground by streets, but they also have walkways from subway station to subway station in case you're on the wrong side of the tracks or anything. So it's underground walkways that go under the actual subway tracks themselves. Those areas get pretty crowded, especially during rush hour, from people trying to get from one area to another. That's where the guy was when he set off this thing. He was wearing a suicide vest. It didn't go off.
He burned himself.
He burned himself with the pipe bomb. They called it a quote-unquote low-tech device. They said it prematurely went off. He got burns on his abdomen and his side. He was the only person that was seriously injured. Everyone else was just minor injuries. Thank God because of that.
This could have been way bigger.
More so just ringing in the ears and headaches and small burns, but nothing too serious.
Yeah.
But the guy himself, named Akayed Ullah, 27 years old, from Bangladesh, as we said, living in Brooklyn since, I believe, they said he came here several years ago. He's been here. Okay, here we go. Yeah.
He was a legal resident. He was a legal permanent resident.
But he came here because of chain migration.
Yeah, I was going to say.
He was a chain migrant. And the person he chain migrated off of was a diversity visa lottery person.
It's funny how they have these multiple programs to get multiple degrees of more people in.
You have no idea. Coming from somebody who understands immigration law and worked as an immigration officer, if someone really makes an effort, you can get just about anybody into this country legally, but it takes time, and that's why people choose to pay coyotes to take them across the border, because they don't want to spend that time doing it legally.
Yeah.
And not only that, the guy himself who did it, the morning of the attack, before he did it, posted on Facebook saying, quote, "Trump, you failed to protect your nation."
By letting me in.
Yeah, exactly, by letting you in. I don't want you here. I want you gone. I want everyone like you gone.
What is the most frightening thing about this incident is the fact that this legal permanent resident, ethnic Bangladeshi, was a lone wolf, it appears, and we still have yet to see the activation of any sleeper cells in this country. Now, what is disturbing about that is that they're here. Yeah. There's no question they are here. Now, the FBI is doing a fantastic job outside of Washington, D.C., let me put that on there, rolling up a lot of these cells, and we aren't hearing about it because that's not their job to share all of that information. But at the end of the day, we have a number of sleeper cells in our communities in this country. I know that because that's an issue that I worked my entire life pursuing. And I am very, very concerned and a bit anxious about when the call is going to come to activate those groups, because I think it's going to happen all at once.
Yeah.
And then it's going to be a 9/11 type event, and they will destabilize our country because that's what they want to do. But don't let the ISIS is defeated in Syria story fool you. They are here, and they are living off of our nation, living in this country and abusing all of our freedoms. And one day they will do what they came here to do.
And actually, he did tell authorities he did it for the Islamic State. So that question I had earlier, yeah, He said he did it for them.
Okay, yeah, but the big thing that you mentioned before about this guy is he's one of these chain migration cases. Yes. At the end of the day, we have to ask ourselves, like, what was the purpose of having this guy here? Because has it been explained why he needed to be here? No, he didn't need to be here at all.
No. Trump is absolutely right. We have to begin to ask that question, what do you bring to the table? Because we've got an entire list of things over here of what we are giving to you. Somewhere along the line, somebody's got to be able to bring something to us. Now, you can go back to Ellis Island in the turn of the century, 19th century, 20th century, and say those people didn't have any particular thing that they were bringing, and that's just not true. They did. A work ethic, a lot of times training in certain trades that they brought from Europe. It was a totally different circumstance. We definitely need to be asking that question. What do you bring to us?
But wasn't this guy just like a taxi driver or something?
Yeah, taxi driver.
Are there not Americans that can fill this role?
Automatization's going to fill that role here in about a decade.
So it's just like, why do we still play this game? Like, we always like to frame it this way. The left always wants to say, like, oh, if we can pass any sort of gun law that saves one life, it was worth it. Why can't we say the same for immigration? Because, okay.
It's about real reform.
Yeah. Because, this guy, he didn't kill anyone, but he very easily well could have.
He was trying to.
Yeah.
If it wasn't for the fact that he was an idiot, and the thing went off early, and he would have.
He's not the first guy in New York City this year to come through chain migration.
The mosque that he went to has been under investigation for radicalization for several years now. Yeah. The mosque in Brooklyn where he went to.
There's very few mosques
the Uzbeki guy
that aren't under investigation in one way or another. At the end of the day, immigration reform is what we need. We need to close these loopholes, and we have to quit. We have to move away from this idea that we have some obligation to feed the rest of the world, to provide opportunity for the rest of the world. Things change, and we can't afford to do that anymore. We have to look at our equities and see what our needs are as well. Nobody should come to this country who is 100% taking. There's got to be something that they bring to the table.
Yeah. And, it's not the first New York City-related terrorist attack this year from chain migration.
We just had one a month and a half ago.
Yeah, the Uzbeki guy, who actually did kill people. And he was in this country doing Uber, okay? I don't see the point in importing people to work for Uber. Anyone can freaking do it. It's not hard. You work for yourself. It's a joke, but the people that, powers that be, they don't want to fix these problems because they just won't let anyone in.
And these people, sometimes they come to America and they have been told that this is going to happen and that's going to happen and things are going to be so wonderful, and it doesn't always work out that way, and they develop resentments because maybe they don't want to be an Uber driver. And they end up having a great deal of resentment for the system. And that's something else we also have to look for. But again, our president took the initial step towards immigration reform by putting guidelines on anyone that is coming from a special interest country as an immigrant, 3-month waiting period so that background checks could confirm that they do not have terrorist ties. Very reasonable, and a proper step towards full immigration reform, which we need.
Yeah. So, I don't know. This, kind of got buried in the news of the week because no one really died, but it is something that we need to touch on. And remember last week we were talking about that one study, chain migration in the next decade. If we don't change anything about what we do, it's going to cost the American public $1.9 trillion.
Mm-hmm. And that's just from chain migration.
Because that's the majority of immigration at this point.
I mean, what they say?
That's the big threat. That's why we don't want DACA either. Okay?
Every immigrant brings 6 chain migrants.
Well, again, guys, immigration reform will take care of that. We have to reform the system, and we have to close these loopholes that are letting people in who not only have no benefit to our culture and community, but have connections to extremism and fanaticism, and they're coming in.
And the thing is, I think most people hearing what we just talked about would say this seems reasonable. The real thing is the media doesn't want to tell people these sort of arguments or these sort of lines of reasoning because they're too reasonable, and that could get people to actually be mad about something. So we can't do that.
Enough people are mad about it too.
Enough people are starting to be mad about it.
That are tacit, silent about it, but they understand it and they agree with it.
Are you two young men old enough to remember when they discovered that the industrial military complex was charging the U.S. taxpayer $800 for a hammer and $500 for a toilet seat? This happened about 10, 15, maybe 20 years ago. Someone did an audit and found out that the U.S. taxpayer was being obscenely overcharged for things. This audit showed a tremendous amount of fraud and waste in the government. Well, the government continued to appoint panels to investigate this and try and get their handle on this issue, and nothing was ever done. And it's the same way with immigration reform. It's time that we started allowing civilian panels to do this investigation. If you continue to let the government investigate itself, you're not going to get any solution. And this is from working my entire life inside of the government, the amount of waste that I saw is astounding. And it bothers me when I look at this national debt that we have, that we continue to waste so much money. The government won't fix it. We need to appoint a civilian panel and give them the authority to make recommendations that will stick. Otherwise, we're just going to keep flushing money down the toilet. The same thing can be done with immigration. I don't really trust the government investigating itself. I really don't.
Yeah. So I don't really have anything else on this one. Do you, Bobby?
No, I'm fine with moving on to the next
let's
story.
move on. Here. So the GOP has released their tax bill. Me and Bobby, we talked about this kind of extensively yesterday.
You and I just alone have been talking about this pretty extensively.
Because we've followed every single development for months now, and now stuff is actually happening, and they're going to vote on this Tuesday.
Yeah, well, it's expected to vote on it Tuesday. It could be any day, but that's what they're setting as the date. They finished the reconciliation process, which is good. I'm actually going to go over kind of
the components
of that. It's a lot more similar to the Senate version of the bill than the House version of the bill, which I don't particularly like.
Which is not what we wanted.
However, I'm going to put it this way. If you can get this passed and then get some of our guys in there next year, you can do more.
Yeah, you
can do more in 2019, which if you can at least get a step in the right direction right now, a pretty big step in the right direction right now, and then worry about the rest later, I'm fine with that.
How do you feel about the reduction from 7 to 3 options?
Well, that's not going to happen because this version keeps the 7 there. I would like it to be the 3 versions.
We wanted the 3 or 4.
The 3 tax brackets, 3 or 4.
Well, there are some people still trying to fight for that.
Yeah.
We'll see on Tuesday. Do you approve with the tax on businesses being lowered from 36 to 20%?
21%.
It's now 21.
Yeah.
It's weird how they have to keep compromising, but I understand it.
Yeah, but anyways, I'm going to go over kind of here what it does. It keeps the 7 rates, however, it changes where the cutoffs are.
Yeah.
For said rates. There's a pretty good chart that they had on here that showed it.
Do you want to go over the rates?
Yeah, I'm going to go over it. So, actually, I would need to get up that chart here. So I'll get to that here in a second. Yeah. It scraps the personal exemption, but it increases standard deductions. So doubles both.
Significantly.
Well, yeah. It doubles both for both individuals and for families. So if you're a family, a married couple filing jointly making less than $24,000 a year, you're paying 0. Used to be if you were making less than 12. So for individuals, that's a big deal. The plan also sets a 20% business income deduction for the first $315,000 in income earned by pass-through businesses. So do you guys kind of understand the whole pass-through income type thing?
Kind of, but why don't you explain it for people that don't know?
Well, if I get any part of this wrong, and any of you two know that I get any part of this wrong, please go ahead and just stop me right then and there.
Yeah.
A lot of people that own businesses by themselves, that are sole proprietors, the income that they make from their business is their income because they are their business. The question is, do you tax that as a business or do you tax that as an individual? And granted, most of the time people just tax that as an individual, but then what if you have business expenses that you're trying to deduct from you, but this is my personal income, so they have pass-through, and there's a lot of jargon. I've taken a tax class, but essentially it means that if you are doing that, you have a lot higher deduction you're allowed to take, and it's taxed at a different rate that's kind of in between
where it is,
where an individual would put it and where a business would put it.
Yeah.
So it simplifies it. And that's the whole point of this, is just simplifying things. The priority
so it's
here,
better for business owners.
The priority here is the middle class. They've been saying that this entire time. I mean, we've been saying, a lot of rich people are actually going to see their taxes go up because of this.
And I don't think that we should have given up these talking points, but like the narratives that they pushed during the process of this actually have been effective to a certain amount of degree.
It also scraps the Obamacare individual mandate, which is good. So you will no longer be forced to buy, or at least forced to pay a penalty for not purchasing health insurance.
And the penalty was what, like $600 and...
It goes up every year, but it was around $600-700 as of 2016. I haven't done my 2017 taxes, so I don't know exactly what that was. It eliminates the alternative minimum tax, which, if you don't know what the alternative minimum tax is, it's if you're a rich person who takes a bunch of deductions in order to pay less taxes, you essentially have to do your income taxes over again without as many deductions. And then whatever number is the higher amount that you'd have to pay, depending on which one you did, you got to pay the higher amount. Yeah. So essentially it's saying, hey, rich people, you know these deductions we gave to you? Yeah, you're not allowed to use them. We just got rid of that altogether.
Yeah.
Granted, we're also getting rid of a lot of those deductions as well. Here's something that I don't like about this bill.
Yes.
It does not eliminate the estate tax.
It does.
Which is also the death tax. Does not eliminate it. However, the exemption is doubled to, I believe it's actually I've got it right here. The estate tax, it doesn't give me the exact numbers, but it does double the exemption that you're going to have.
That's interesting because they're real hard sticklers for that estate tax the whole time.
The Republicans have been trying to get rid of the estate tax for forever now.
That's like a foundational thing they always talk about.
Yeah, so that's another one of those things where they say they want to do it, but they're not able to do it. That's, excuse me, sorry. That's one of those things where it's like, okay, you don't get this done next time. Try to get some of our guys in office, and if you do, you'll have a lot more flexibility in doing that in 2019, which I think they should easily be able to get rid of the estate tax in 2019 if you can get some of our guys in the Senate and House. But it also delays the cut in corporate tax rates till next year. So
wow.
We have to wait a year to see that.
That's not good.
It isn't good. It also does drop most of the state, local, and tax deductions. However, they increase the amount that's allowed to deduct. It used to be you could deduct pretty much all of it. Now you can only deduct up to the first $10,000 in state and local taxes and property taxes and whatnot. So for all the people that were in blue states that have pretty high
California,
California I think has now a 10% income tax in their own state income tax. It's insane. If you're someone who's making $500,000 a year, that's $50,000 already.
Yeah.
You can only deduct
just
10.
in the state.
So you can see what, especially Republicans in those states, were very hesitant to want to vote for this bill. That's why a couple of the people in the House that were in New York didn't vote for the bill.
Yeah.
They were dissent. They were, no votes on
There
that.
is a lot of dissent from the New York Republicans.
I mean, we can use that as to say, well, how about you get your own states under control? But obviously that's never going to happen if you're a Republican in a blue state. But they're allowing up to 10,000. So it's not the best, but I mean, hey, I got to say, if you're a Republican who's a pretty hardcore conservative living in a blue state, what the hell are you doing? Why have you not moved?
It's time to get out.
You're the problem here. You're not going to be a solution anywhere. Move to Texas, move to Georgia, move to Florida, move to somewhere where your vote's actually going to matter. Hell, move to Tennessee. They don't have a state income tax.
Yeah. Go somewhere else.
It increases the child tax credit. It doubles it. That's very good.
That was Rubio's fight.
One thing that the Senate bill did have that the House bill did not have, which I actually like, is it maintains the medical expenses deduction. If you have a lot of medical expenses, you used to be able to deduct that for your taxes. When they were getting rid of a bunch of the other deductions you could take, they got rid of that one. Well, if you're someone who has a lot of hospital bills and stuff, you should be able to deduct that,
Yeah.
So you can deduct that stuff still. It changes, however, the percent. It lowers it to 7.5% until 2019, and then 2020 on, it raises it back to the 10% it currently is. So for most people, that probably won't mean anything, but if you're someone who does do that, you're probably going to have to pay a little bit more for the next couple of years, and then you'll be able to go back to where you were. That's essentially that. Also, we said it raises the standard deduction, doesn't repeal the estate tax. Student income, however. This is one of those things where I actually got into a debate with a girl in one of my classes a couple of weeks ago about this, where what the House bill is, it treated tuition waivers for graduate students as taxable income.
Which they were mad about.
Yeah, so essentially, if you get a scholarship to go to school, and let's say the school you go to is, I don't know, $10,000 a semester. So you get a full ride scholarship, let's say. Okay, $10,000 a semester, 2 semesters a year, that's $20,000 a year. Plus so that's $20,000 a year. That would be added on to whatever you're currently making at like McDonald's or wherever you're working.
Yeah.
You then have to pay a rate based on that. The House bill taxed that money. And when it passed in the House before the Senate voted on it, a lot of people, especially in colleges, were like, you should not support this because this is going to raise your taxes.
Yeah, they're in the streets.
The Senate bill got rid of that. Does not tax it. The final version does not tax it.
Okay.
So if you're one of the students who was concerned that, crap, I'm going to have to pay an extra $20,000, or, I might have to pay an extra...
The rate of
X thousand dollars
more.
Yeah, a higher rate, X thousand more dollars potentially in my taxes. Don't worry, you're fine. That's essentially the big things that it does. I believe I got everything. I'm just trying to scroll through here just to make sure I did.
It's interesting hearing the evolution now.
One more. Tax breaks for charitable contributions and retirement savings plans will remain. The House bill kind of screwed with them a little bit. The Senate bill left them how they were. Those stay the same. So, that's again, when we were talking about the Senate bill and the House bill way back when, a couple weeks ago when we were talking about this, we talked about the aspects that we liked and didn't like of each bill. Most of the stuff in here I do like.
Yeah.
But there are some things I don't like. It is more similar to the Senate bill. Like, I don't like the fact that they kept the 7 brackets. I'd like to see it reduced to 3. But, again, this is stuff that take what you can get right now and then worry about
work on it later.
So
I think the 2 things that I don't like about it the most are the delay in the corporate tax rate for a whole year. What's the point in that? That was what was going to boost your economy a lot. That was what the whole plan was about in a lot of senses. But, I mean, people are really picky about that just because they doesn't really know what it does. So it's annoying. But, and also, really just weird that they wouldn't get the estate tax like they wanted completely.
That's one of those things you'd think would be a slam dunk.
Yeah.
I mean, at this point, like we said, we don't have to worry about Democrats voting for it. They're all going to vote against it.
Yeah.
You have to worry about your own Republicans voting against it. It's part of the reason why Marco Rubio, he said he was not going to support it because it didn't get the child tax credit where he wanted it to be. And that was after they said this is our quote-unquote final version.
Yeah.
Well, they went in after
That was
hearing
just
that.
a couple days ago.
After hearing that, they went back and said, change that. Make it so that he's going to vote for it. They did. He comes out and says, you know what? Now that they changed it, I will support it.
That's how nervous
Even
they are.
Bob Corker of Tennessee, who was the only Republican to vote against it when they voted on it in the Senate, for the Senate version of the bill, he said, yeah, I'm going to support this. So we have the votes to pass this thing. We have the votes that we need.
They're nervous, though. Keep Mike Pence ready because, like, if someone wants to, fuck over the whole thing, they'll do it.
And here's the thing. I'm not worried about the House. I'm not worried about the House.
Yeah, it's the Senate.
It's the Senate. Oh, and also, isn't it just a coincidence that, now McCain's tumor is starting to hurt and he's back in the hospital?
Oh, no.
Oh, no, he might not be able to vote for it. He might be in the hospital.
I think he could stay home knowing the way that he probably will.
I'm rooting for the...
But, I mean, come in. Let's see how you vote, dude.
I mean, if he votes against it, then you might as well just keep him in the hospital. You might as well accelerate.
He doesn't need to vote on more things if he votes that way.
Hey, like I said, he's not up for re-election until 2022 if he survives that long. If so, and when that primary comes along, I'm voting for the tumor, just saying. But there is one more thing about tax reform that I do want to mention.
Yes.
There is a rumor going around D.C. I know we do not like to talk about rumors on this show. We like to talk about actual things that are going on. There is a strong rumor going around D.C. that Paul Ryan is talking about if tax reform passes, it's going to scale back his activity, possibly even not seek re-election.
Yeah, he's looking at leaving because you look at his kids; they're getting ready to go on to like college and stuff. Mm-hmm. So he wants to like cut back and prepare for that to like be around them. And like, hey, Paul Ryan, I'm down with you doing that. That sounds great. Go do that.
He knows your average everyday Republican hates him. They hate his guts. And he sees the writing on the wall. He knows what's coming in these midterms.
Dude, in elections, I added this last night. There's rumors that there's going to be a lot of like sexual allegations and stuff coming out.
I've heard that as well.
Next week.
I mean, we'll get to that when we get to that.
Yeah, we'll get to that. But a lot of people think Paul Ryan has stuff, and he's just getting out before it hits.
I mean, that would help Paul Nealon running against him.
Be fine.
But, I don't really have anything more to say. Part of me thinks that Paul Ryan's the type of guy that, doesn't want to give up his power. Another part of me sees it as, he kind of understands.
I think he wants to get out.
He wants to jump ship before the thing sinks.
Find a new job.
I'd be perfectly fine with, going on Craigslist and emailing him and say, hey, I found you a couple of positions here, dude. They got dog walkers. They got dog catchers. They got dog groomers.
He should teach CrossFit. That would be a good job for him.
He's been in enough in that position of influence to where he will never have to be concerned about anything for the rest of his life.
No,
because you have to remember, you have to pay for the positions you hold in like the House and Senate. So if he's the Speaker of the House, you know how much you have to pay every year to hold that seat?
It's like $20 million or something like that.
It's like $30 million.
Jesus.
So he's getting $30 million and someone giving him donations every year to pay for this membership. So yeah, Paul Ryan's in good spots, but I think he knows it's time to get out soon, dude. But let's go on to the next thing that we're going to talk about, and this is some of this FBI Mueller stuff.
Yeah, I'm interested to get Eric's take on this, even though he wasn't FBI, he's CIA, but, still the swamp. There have been some text messages that have come out between some FBI agents that were working on the Mueller probe.
That were also on the Clinton stuff.
Yes.
With the emails.
And there were hundreds of text messages between...
thousands.
Yeah, thousands. Between...
7,000 alone from one person.
Was it that many? Amazing. Between Peter Strzok, thank you for my pronunciation of that last weekend, so I appreciate you correcting me on that, and his then-girlfriend or current girlfriend, Lisa Page.
Oh, now, the thing about her is they're having an affair together.
Oh, that's what they were doing.
Yeah.
It doesn't surprise me. But they got tons and tons of text messages, many of them, obviously anti-Trump.
You got some of the good ones? I got a good one from them.
I want you to read your good one first, so it's not. Make sure it's not the same one.
Okay. I want to believe the path you threw out for consideration. Annie's office. Andy means Andrew McCabe. Andrew's office. That there's no way Trump gets elected, but I'm afraid we can't take that risk. It's like an insurance policy in the unlikely event you die before you're 40. So they're planning to screw up the whole system if Trump gets elected.
Well, that's a separate issue from the abuse of GSA and the collection of thousands and thousands of emails that were collected illegally, as far as I'm concerned, by Mueller. And the only reason why he had to reach out in that direction is because he has repeatedly come up against roadblocks that are not roadblocks from obstinate people not wanting to talk. They are roadblocks from not having any evidence. So each time that he runs into a spot where he has run out of evidence, he has to reach out and try and expand his investigation. And by doing that, he is able to use his authority to get the GSA to produce all of these emails, every email that was sent by anybody that had anything at all to do with the Trump transition team. And we're talking about thousands and thousands of emails, and a lot of that information is protected. I think that Mueller actually anticipated that he was going to be able to slide by without people noticing some of the things that he was doing. But again, the special counsel Every time we get a special counsel, we have to deal with mission creep. Every single time. They end up looking at stuff that wasn't part of their original orders. And so Mueller used these emails to put people on the spot that he was interviewing, and including Flynn. And when you have someone who's a special counsel breaking the law, I think the time has come for that investigation to be shut down. I really do. I think that there is enough evidence of bias. And now you can include your issue involving the tweets, because those people were working directly with Mueller and on his team and had an obvious bias against the administration. You can't run an investigation like that. Mueller seemed to go out and find only people that had a bone to pick with Trump, attorneys that had a bone to pick with Trump, and put them on his staff. I just don't get it. You would have thought he alone would have said, I can't do this because I got to show some integrity to my investigation. Well, now that investigation has no integrity whatsoever. And the obtaining of all of these emails, including information that's protected, according to Trump's attorney, just puts more questions out there about his bias, Mueller's bias. And I can tell you, from my experience working in Washington, D.C., there is more than enough reason and justification for Trump to shut down that investigation.
And looking at how people perceive it in the nation at the moment, there is a new survey out of Harvard did the survey. This is on the Hill, so the Hill is very left-wing to begin with. But 54% of respondents believe that Mueller has a conflict of interest. The breakdown is 70% of Republicans, 53% of independents, and 40% of Democrats. So even a lot of Democrats think that there's some bad stuff with this Mueller probe going on. And, if they're honest, they should acknowledge that.
Well, after the amount of time that he's had, if they do shut down the investigation, he's got every opportunity to say, this is the evidence that I have, and you know what? He's not going to have any evidence because there isn't any. He really piled some stuff on Flynn. He went back to 2013, and actually in one instance 2010 with Flynn, when there was no connection whatsoever to a candidate, Trump. And there again you have this mission creep that every special counselor gets. In order to validate their investigation, they will go and reach outside of the bounds of what's reasonable to investigate and try and dig up dirt on people. They'll find dirt. It's not related to what they're investigating, but they can use it to corner people and try and get them to become part of their investigation. It's an absolute mess. The entire special counsel law, I think, should be done away with because it's never functioned as it should. In this instance in particular, it needs to go because there is more evidence right now to justify an independent counsel on Hillary Clinton and the Clinton Foundation than there is on this continued alleged Trump collusion with Russia.
Yeah.
There's even talk out there about potentially having a special counsel come up to investigate that.
Yeah.
I guess I'd be okay with that, but
I would too. But the Republicans in Congress will never agree to that.
Never. They
won't. Never, because they will believe that will hurt them when they go back to campaign. That is all that they're concerned about is re-election.
Which, talking about what's happening with these individuals in particular, this is a very recent thing, but Jim Jordan, representative from Ohio, which we saw him
speak when we were in Orlando.
We were at an Americans for Prosperity thing. He has a commitment from the committee chairman of the House Judiciary Committee, Bob Goodlatte. He's a Republican out of Virginia. And saying that they're going to issue several subpoenas on some of these people that we're talking about. Deputy FBI Director Andrew McCabe, Peter Strzok,
Good.
Lisa Page, who we just mentioned, as well as former Associate Deputy Attorney General Bruce Orr and his wife, Nellie.
Absolutely justified.
So we're going to look into this.
It's going to be fun to see where that goes.
People on the left are going to lose their mind when we start pulling some rabbits out of hats.
And all the while, the American people are sitting back and saying, who's doing my business? Who's taking care of this country right now? This political establishment in Washington, D.C. is reminiscent of Edward Gibbon and the fall of the Roman Empire. It just seems to be crumbling all over itself with corruption and innuendo. And at the end of the day, that is the result of having a dominant political class that is nothing but career politicians.
Yeah.
They will not ever be there in the end for the American people. And they've proven that over and over again. But at the end of the day, it's up to the American people to make that change. They have the right to go into the ballot box. People have asked me, how can you support term limits when the Founding Fathers intended the people to be their own term limit? To enact term limits by voting people out of office. And I said, I see that and I acknowledge that. But in 1790, things were a little bit different, at least the thought processes were, because the Founding Fathers assumed that the American people would have the integrity to not go into office and stay 10 years. They just couldn't envision that happening. They could not envision people going and turning Congress into a lifetime job. And they thought that when it would happen, the people would vote them out. But what we see for the last 30 and 40 years is people accessing every resource available to raise money to run for re-election, and that's what's created this mess that we have.
So yeah, I don't have much else on this too, Bobby.
Nope.
Let's go on to the next thing. This is some good stuff. President Trump this week has signed the National Defense Authorization Act, and what we're going to see out of this is it's going to be the largest pay increase for the U.S. military over the last 7 years. It's going to be giving soldiers on an average a 2.4% pay raise right before Christmas. This is bipartisan. They don't really have problems trying to get these sort of things passed. The bill will also create more opportunities for employment in the military, as well as to create additional revenue for making our military the best in the world.
That's good. Our military they've needed a pay raise for a while now.
It's long overdue.
Very long overdue. 2.4% doesn't seem too much, but that's a lot. That is a lot of money.
I would take it on my disability paycheck, I'll tell you that.
Yeah.
The news kind of slid over the fact that, the Trump administration has been a big part of the defeat of ISIS in the Middle East. And it's just another campaign promise that Donald Trump has kept. And you're not going to see that in the mainstream media. But we have to have faith that the American people are going to recognize that anyways. We turned our strategy around 180 degrees from appeasement and apology of the Obama years to terrorists and terrorist nations to we're going to destroy you.
Yeah.
And that is what you have to do. You cannot appease terrorists. They will never go away. And I am so pleased to see that the Trump administration has stayed true to fighting the war on terror and has seen this through, some really delicate issues involving relations with Russia in Syria and also Israel. You guys, you can just chalk it up to another campaign promise kept.
And if people knew that this is, something he's delivering on, maybe it'd make them be a little more favorable of him. But that's why we can't talk about this on the mainstream media, because it would make him look good, and we can't do that.
That goes into the very next story that I wanted to talk about. We
get into it.
It's perfect. It's a perfect segue into it. 91% of media coverage of Trump is negative. They said in September there were just 31 pro-Trump statements on the big three TV networks versus 359 negative. In October, it was 41 to 435. Add it all up, 91% negative during the past 3 months. And this was a study that was done by Newsbusters.
And what's amazing is I go out there on the campaign trail, and he's just as popular now as he ever was, because the American people have stopped paying attention, and that's why the mainstream media's numbers are so down. Well, I'm referring to actually the three big networks, CBS, NBC, ABC.
They the same ones for this one too.
Yeah, they do not have anywhere near the viewership that they used to, and a lot of people will say, well, that's because of the growth of cable news. But no, actually, it's because people no longer feel connected to those news broadcast companies, and they no longer believe them.
Yeah.
I am so encouraged when I go out into smaller communities where I see people working every day, knowing each other, communities that support each other, and you talk to people and they all support President Trump and the Trump agenda.
So, I often get times people that, look at me different because I see, the media being so partisan, and, I'm so quick to say stuff like fake news, and I dispel it, Oh, and I do my own news show. What's up with that? But really, you look at these studies. If it's 91% with all the good things that I'm able to talk to you about every single week, it should at least be a little bit higher. I could even imagine that most of the things that the media says are negative about him, at least 30 or 40%. With the state of the economy, the way that, just like Eric just said, ISIS is not a problem in Iraq and Syria much anymore. I could go on, but things are actually happening for once. But
Obama had almost completely removed our involvement in Iraq, and Trump turned that around. As soon as he got into office, he started putting our resources back into Iraq with soldiers on the ground, people that were instructing and training Iraqi regiments, and also advising their military staff. And because of that, we see this positive result.
Yeah.
And if you want to find a good website that has a list of Donald Trump's accomplishments, go to magapill.com. That's MAGAPILL.com. They have it broken down by economic, defense, military, Trump government stuff.
Do you want to say some of the best ones?
Broke down by month, boom, 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 with links to articles and everything that he's done. I'll just grab one here.
I think it's good for a refresher on people. I forget about this stuff.
Yeah, so name a month.
April.
Okay, so I'll scroll down to April. Once we find April, we got Gorsuch in the Supreme Court in April.
Yeah, that's a big deal.
In April, that's when Ben Carson found $500 billion in errors during the audit of housing and urban development.
Which
and that was just in government.
I've mentioned that to people in the past, and they're like, wow, that's a lot of money to find.
It's
something like Obama was running a little scheme out there, one might say.
You want to go April, economics, boom. USA small business confidence number hits record high. You want to talk about anything that has to do with the Veterans Affairs? That's when we got the Accountability and Whistleblower Protection Act passed at the VA.
Very good stuff. You can actually finally fire people for being bad at their job.
Exactly. That's when Trump signed a bill to extend Veterans Choice Program as well. And that's just 1 month. A couple little things. That's a very good website. I'll put the link to that in the description of this episode as well.
Yeah.
Magapill.com. You want it when people ask, what has Trump done? Send them that website. They have everything you need to know.
Yeah. There really are some things that are just undeniably good that has come through this administration, whether you're on the left or the right. I think people need to acknowledge these things.
And I think that's actually a good segue to economics next.
Yeah, let's get into that. You got some good numbers out of there as well.
Yeah. The first thing we want to talk about is the Federal Reserve, for the third time this year, has decided to raise interest rates.
So they did do the 3.
They did do the 3, just like we were talking about. They were trying to do 4, but the one in September, the hurricane screwed that up, so they decided not to do it. But we got our 3. And they're raising it up a 0.25 percentage point to a range between 1.25 and 1.5%. So,
which we've said many times before, this hasn't been something that they did under the breath of Obama's presidency. This means that they actually have confidence in the economy to do it, and they're doing this a year into Trump's first administration, or first year as president.
They are planning to have 3 or 4 raises next year.
Yeah.
However, they did say that the first quarter or possibly the second quarter, they might not raise it simply because if you know Janet Yellen's not going to be the chairman of the Federal Reserve anymore.
Yeah.
We're getting that new guy. I should have looked up the name, but we're getting that new guy in there. So that could impede efforts at raising interest rates either in the first quarter or the second quarter of next year. Just keep that in mind.
Yeah.
Going forward and going into that.
And I wish I remember the name too. He's like an Irish guy or something.
Yeah, I should have looked that up. But it's good news.
Yeah.
So we're doing that. And the second story in economics I wanted to talk about, and this one I think is probably even bigger. The New York Federal Reserve is predicting 4.0% interest for the fourth quarter.
Wow.
That's their prediction for the fourth quarter. Probably not going to be that, but that's their prediction here. So, I mean, we're already at like, what were we, 3.1 for the second quarter? We were at 3.3, I think, for the third quarter.
I think for the third quarter, yeah.
It was expected to be higher for the third quarter, but again, hurricanes drove that down a little bit.
But we've rebounded remarkably well from the hurricanes.
But they're predicting 4.0. Yeah.
It's unbelievable stuff.
That is. 4.0 is astonishing, and you won't see those kind of numbers anywhere in Europe or in the Far East.
Barack Obama had one quarter above 3%. One quarter.
We're talking about 4.
Let's hope that these numbers come through.
And if you can get tax reform passed, I think you really will see an explosion in the economy in this country.
I have to be honest. I'm not as excited with some of these changes in the tax reform that maybe others are. I really liked one of the earlier versions. That was, for me, simple is better.
Yes.
Yeah.
And each time that they took it back in hand, they made it more complicated. And at the end of the day, I'm looking at this thing and I'm saying, well, where's the simple gone? The American, I personally support a flat tax or a consumption tax myself. And I just think Donald Trump does too, actually. But you can't get that through Congress right now. So he's doing what he can do. And there's always the opportunity to build on this as time goes.
Good stuff.
It's great stuff. Do you want to get into some science stuff? There's some interesting stuff.
I do.
This week.
We haven't talked about Mars in months.
Yeah, we used to talk about space stuff with Trump every single week.
But that's back in the news now.
Yeah.
Because this week, Trump signed an order telling NASA to, quote, lead an innovative space exploration program to send American astronauts back to the moon and eventually to Mars. He said that at a White House ceremony. So he's signing a directive pretty much telling NASA, hey, send us back to the moon. Send us back to Mars. I know that, we were talking about how back early on in Trump's administration, he had kind of told them that's what he wanted to do.
Yeah.
But he hasn't actually directed them, do it.
Now
This is him saying, do it.
Yeah.
And I know that there was talk of a 2019 moon landing for the 50th anniversary. We haven't heard any more updates about that, so it's probably not going to happen, unfortunately.
Yeah.
But if you were wondering whether or not Trump was serious about, we're sending our guys to Mars and the moon, we're sending our guys to the Mars and the moon. It's now
Mars might be outside of the scope of his presidency.
Well, yeah, and that's the thing.
But the moon definitely will go.
The earliest that we're going to get to Mars is going to be the late 2020s. By then, Trump's out of office.
I'd like to see us focus exclusively on Mars. I think it's been too long in coming. We have the technology to send a manned expedition to Mars, and I just see so much more benefit out of using all those resources in that direction than going back to the moon. I know that NASA is going to say there's all kinds of little bitty tests that they can do with this kind of rock and that kind of this and that kind of that if they go back to the moon. But sooner or later, you're going to have to sell something to the American people. And I think the American people have been waiting for a manned expedition to Mars.
Yes.
For decades. And they've been wondering, all these resources that we've been giving to NASA, is anybody considering it? That's what I would like to see happen. Maybe it's unreasonable. I can tell you from a personal point of view, I don't really care about the manned mission to the moon. It was during my lifetime, the first one. But I'd love to live long enough to see somebody walking on Mars. That would be tremendous.
And think about our generation. I mean, if you're born after 1969, you obviously never saw the moon landing.
Yeah.
Or if you were born after like 1972, I think, you wouldn't see any moon landings.
Yeah.
I think that was the last year they did it. Or at least around that same time period.
Yeah.
So that's like, a sizable portion of
my thing is like now we're going to go with like
high definition
cameras,
live streaming, like through like
I mean, we're already
360-degree live streaming.
We're already working on like virtual reality. Like you'll be able to show people what it's like to be on the moon almost. Mm-hmm. And like it's going to look nice.
Yeah, I can't wait for it. But the moon landing, as much as I hate to say it, I think that 50th anniversary 2019 moon landing is probably not going to happen, unfortunately. But we still have 2 years for that, so we'll see.
You two young men are very intelligent and from a good representation of your generation. Do people wonder why we haven't made more of an effort to put a man on Mars?
Yeah. From the people I talk to, but then again, I kind of talk to like nerds. But
well,
I'm biased.
That is a question that should be asked.
I don't think I've ever known anyone that's talked about that.
Well, what about you two?
I personally don't have a lot of interest to space. It's Bobby much more so than I do.
Yeah, I mean, I want us to go to Mars. I want us to go to the moon. I want us to set up colonies personally. I want us to harvest resources.
This is one of the instances where it might...
Scientific and human achievements.
There are some things that it's time that our government was much more open with people about.
Yeah.
And it's been way too long in coming, some things in particular. And I think that people should ask that question. Why haven't we put a man on Mars? In fact, why haven't we really done anything outside of shoot satellites with telescopic cameras in them way out into the solar system? The point of all of this is, I think, supposed to deliver humankind outside of the bonds of Earth. Mm-hmm. And we certainly have gotten away from that.
And there's one more thing. I actually didn't have an article about this, but this happened earlier this week. The government, or at least the Pentagon, is actually now investigating Air Force pilots and Navy pilots that have supposedly said that they've seen UFOs.
That was a nice segue there, Bobby.
Yeah, the Pentagon actually said they're launching an official investigation into that because so many pilots have claimed that they've seen...
An official investigation.
Not saying aliens. I'm just saying unidentified flying objects they weren't able to identify or figure out like what they were doing. They're launching an official investigation into that right now.
I can tell you from my own background that there's nothing they're going to find out in that investigation that they haven't already known for a long time.
But if anything, it's just to make people feel good about it.
That's exactly what it is. Mm-hmm. And it makes it's food for the American people. It tells them, see, we do take this seriously.
It's also maybe another way to get some extra Pentagon funding. Say, hey, Congress, we need an extra $100 million to do this.
Well,
give us an extra $100 million in the budget.
There are so many people now that have seen things, and now everybody has a camera and everybody has a video camera in their phone. There is so much evidence that's being collected, a lot of it fake, but some things that cannot be explained. It's the government's in the government's best interest to give people a little bit of something to eat on, so they don't ask all these questions.
It's like those JFK releases we got a month or two ago.
Yeah, I guess
those are fun to look through.
Yeah, I found them interesting too, looking through them. I have a couple of friends that were on his security detail on the Secret Service at the time. One of them's a really older guy that lives in Dallas, and I hope he's going to be with us for Christmas because he's real sick right now. But boy, he told me some interesting things.
Yeah. Do you want to go into my science?
I want to hear this story, Enzo. I purposely have been staying away from this so that you could surprise me and shock me.
So I got like a really funny story and like really shocking stuff. So I'll start with funny. So the San Francisco branch of the Society for the Prevention of Cruelty to Animals has been ordered by the city to stop using a robot to patrol the sidewalks outside their office. The reason why is reportedly they're using this robot to shoo away the homeless people from camping around at the building.
I mean, this thing's like maybe
What does that have to do with animals?
It's to stop people from breaking into the people who works at that building's cars.
Oh, I thought you said it was the Society for the Prevention of Cruelty to Animals.
Yeah,
they're the
ones that have the robot.
Oh my goodness.
They hired the robot. It's a Silicon Valley startup called Nightscope. They lease out the robot to people. So for $7 an hour, they rent out the robot. So that's lower than the minimum wage in California.
$3 less than the minimum wage in California.
What was their purpose for using the robot, the Society for the Prevention of Cruelty to Animals, to try and videotape people hurting animals?
No, to keep homeless people.
Be security for the building.
Oh, yeah. Just for the... Okay, I get it.
It's outside the offices.
It's this little, like, three-wheel... Don't like
and
almost looks like a giant trash can with a dome on top.
It kind of looks like R2D2.
Yeah, and it does sort of.
And the funny thing is, like,
it's got like a camera
because they're the Society for the Prevention of Cruelty of Animals, like they love animals. They put like cat and puppy stickers on it, and it drives around. Like I'll show you the photo of it. It's this little robot that drives around that, like, because it can, like, pick up on, like...
It looks like a missile warhead is what it looks like.
It roves around. Yeah. It goes, like, 3 miles per hour. And, like, it can pick up on, like, behavior that's bad. And, like, the San Francisco City Council has voted to, like, restrict the usage of this stuff because it's, like, I guess abusive to homeless people. But, like, reportedly, like, car break-ins and, like, safety in the area... is up because they've been using this robot. So, we talked last week kind of extensively, or not last week when we had Sam Brennan on, extensively about automation, and we're automizing, people working security.
Yeah.
I mean, I'm down with the robot. It would be pretty funny just to see this robot, like, beeping at people. I
want there to be a bunch of chappies walking around.
Chappies?
I wouldn't be surprised to see a homeless person take that robot and turn it into a microwave oven.
Whoosh. So, let me go into the really stunning thing I got this week.
Not as funny story.
I wouldn't really call it funny.
It's not funny at all.
But it's insane. There is a new study that finds that hormonal birth control triples women's risk for suicide. This was a study this is a study published in the American Journal of Psychiatry. The researchers that did this were actually in Denmark. And it studied different hormonal contraceptives like birth control pills, the patch, the ring, and hormonal IUDs. And what they found is among women who use hormonal contraceptives currently or recently, the risk of attempted suicide was nearly double that of women who had never used the contraceptives. The risk was triple for suicide. The patch was linked to the highest risk of suicide attempts, followed by IUDs, the vaginal ring, and then the pill. So that's a stat.
That's not good.
They have a 3 times higher suicide rate than people that don't use contraceptives.
I think that that says a lot about demographics and the choices people make. People who use contraceptives probably lead a very busy life, and they have a lot of pressure, I guess, and a lot of stress. And maybe that's what causes them to be more likely to be suicidal.
Now let me trigger you further. The Center for Disease Control estimates that more than half, 53%, of girls aged 15 to 19 are on the pill. So over half of young girls have this increased suicide risk, dramatically increased suicide risk.
Do you think that's why there are so many teenage suicides?
It could be causing
or why
is the pill hormonal based? Okay.
It changes your hormones in you.
Yeah, it's not
crazy stuff.
Mm-hmm.
It's not really the kind of stuff that feminists would really want to bring up so much, but I mean it's a thing.
Yeah, no, I am glad you shared that with me. That's something that's good food for thought and good ammunition the next time you have a conversation with someone about the joys of contraception.
It's hey, you want to triple your risk of suicide?
Yeah.
Let's after that, though, I think we should go into some immigration. We got some good stuff this week.
Okay.
Open the door! Immigration!
La migra, vamos, niños!
This week in immigration.
So the first thing that we have out of immigration that I want to get into is the Trump administration has set new rules for visa-free travel to the United States. This would be new requirements for 38 different nations whose citizens are allowed to travel to the United States without visas.
On the visa waiver program.
Yeah. So the new requirements will apply to the U.S.'s closest allies. To participate in the visa waiver program, countries must meet a higher bar for terror screening and cooperation with U.S. vetting for their citizens. The new requirements are meant to enhance the cooperation, Department of Homeland Security officials have said. So we're taking a look in what countries currently, allow people to come here visa-free. And one of the other things that was also mentioned is they're thinking about going or doing away with visa-free travels to countries that have higher percentages of overstays of visas. Mm-hmm. So if you have a 2% higher or 2% or higher like stayover rate, your nation might be at risk of losing its visa-free stayover.
This is going to be real tough because Mexico, by far, is going to be the number one country for visa overstays. And there are a lot of visa overstays from Europe because people have relatives in Europe and they don't take the rules seriously because no one's going to go and round up somebody's grandma from Greenwich, Connecticut and throw her in jail because she's from Ireland and overstayed her visa. But those rules are very, very helpful in determining, actually in keeping this country safe and determining who actually wants to come here to hurt us and who doesn't. But we have to be prepared for retaliation. It will happen. The Europeans, in particular, love that visa waiver program, and they also love to retaliate. They don't like President Trump, and they will try and get their immigration authorities from the EU to mirror whatever we do. At the end of the day, the business community in the EU is probably going to stop that from happening because when our people go over to Europe, they spend a ton of money. So we'll have to see how it all plays out.
Yeah, one thing it does say here is that there isn't any timeline that they've set for this, so
this could change, but this is what they're aiming for, which, I mean, it's good that they're trying to do this, I guess.
It is good. It's all about, at the end of the day, regaining control of our immigration program. And there's, we have to have integrity in that program because, as I always tell people, we are only as safe as the weakest part of our border, and that includes our port of entries at the airports.
Yeah.
We have to be in control of who comes into this country.
And part of the control of who comes into this country, another thing you could talk about is DACA, which kind of a segue to the next story that we have here. 37% of swing voters, almost 4 in 10 swing voters, say that giving the DACA people amnesty is not a priority.
40%.
Should not be a priority.
Well,
only 18% of independent swing voters, or I think just swing voters, say that it should be a priority. The rest just don't care.
Well, what is amnesty? You get into semantics here because when you ask that question in a poll, is amnesty legal permanent residence or is amnesty citizenship? And there's a huge difference there.
Yeah.
Because one allows you to vote and one doesn't. Mm-hmm. The Democrats want an amnesty program, not just for
pathway to citizenship.
They want an amnesty program for everyone in this country that has been here, more than 5 years, that is here illegally. And they want them to have a smooth transition to citizenship, so they will go into that voting booth and vote Democrat. I recognize the problem both with DACA and with this up to 20 million people living in this country from Latin America, most of them who are here illegally. If we do try and address that issue, I will never, ever approve of citizenship being involved. The most that those people should get is some process toward legal permanent residence, and they will have to earn it. That's the way that I view it. If it's important enough to be part of our community and be legal, then earn it. Learn to speak the language, take a test, and pay a fine, and you can become a legal permanent resident. From then on, you can earn your citizenship from there. But the Democrats and some Republicans are bound and determined to make it about citizenship, which is about as un-American as you can get because their entire existence in this country is predicated on breaking our law.
Yeah, it's funny. Immigration laws are the only laws that are discussed in terms of how we can help the people that broke the laws. Mm-hmm. There are no other laws that work this way.
That's a great point. I'm going to use that.
But, we gotta help them. And my dad, being his Marco Rubio supporting self, he always tells me, we need to keep the DACA people on so bad, so bad, so bad. But, we're going over...
I'm in favor of sending them all back no matter what. They always say, they didn't have a choice in coming here. I say, well, if they didn't have a choice in coming here, they don't have a choice in going back either.
That's my viewpoint
Hashtag
as well.
bye-bye.
That's my viewpoint as well. But, if we allow these people to come, with the chain migration problem that we still have, with Mexicans, the average for, chain migrants over is something like 7. They actually have higher than the average with Mexico. And DACA recipients are something like 79%, 80% Mexicans or something. So it's going to be a wave of people coming in if you just allow
millions
DACA.
And millions of more people.
That will all be eligible for, public assistance. Because they'll be legal residents if they're sponsored over. It's something we can't afford to do.
When you look at when people poll the people, the citizens of Texas, and ask them what issues are most important to you, the top 5, immigration and terrorism, are always in the top 5. Jobs, it's always up there. It's one of the reasons why I decided to, run for Congress, is because my background is so balanced in all of these issues that are important to people. Congress has to deal with the immigration issue. It's something that comes across their desk every single year. And I graduated from the Immigration Academy. There's very few people who understand that law better than I do. And it came up in every year that I worked for the CIA. I was using my immigration skills. And then, of course, I've studied counterterrorism and extremism when I was with the CIA. And I understand the real threat of sleeper cells and bad guys trying to come across our border. Those issues are important and will be something that I can address when I hit the ground running. It's why I continue to say I am the most qualified person running for office. I'll put my qualifications up against any of these other 17 people that showed up in November after Lamar Smith resigned. But immigration and terrorism always make the list.
Yeah. Because people want to see solutions to a system that the system lets run wild.
When you think about the 17 establishment people running, I haven't heard one person there talk about waste and corruption in D.C. And it's something that I experienced firsthand. The old cliche about how government agencies in November will review how much money they have left and try and spend it all, so that when the budget is considered, they'll be able to say we need more. That happens in every department. Department of Agriculture, Department of Justice, the CIA, the FBI, Department of Commerce. It happens in Department of Education. That is the MO, and it has to stop. It continued like crazy during the 8 years of Obama because it was just spend as you go for that administration. But we can get control of this debt. We can. We're not going to pay it off in 4 years, but we've got to turn it around in the right direction. And how we can justify putting that debt on our grandchildren and on our children when we have the opportunity to make steps to fix it right now by addressing corruption and waste is something that I talk about regularly, and I never hear it mentioned from any of the other candidates.
Most definitely. Bobby, do you want to go into the last immigration story?
Yeah, I do. And it's bad news.
Bad news.
So you know how when Trump first came into office, the number of people attempting to cross the border on the southern border was significantly down? They said that over the last couple months, it's now back up to where it was during the Obama years. They said that in the month of November, the Border Patrol arrested 40,000 illegal immigrants attempting to cross the border, which is up 12% compared to October, and more than twice the numbers from March and April back at the beginning of Trump's administration.
Yeah.
Also, they said that perhaps is just as worrisome for officials is the rise in families traveling together. It's not just people by themselves. Families traveling together surged 45% in the last month. Unaccompanied minors traveling without parents rose 26% in November. So there's a wave of them trying to get back over.
This is happening again.
They're coming back.
Well, that's just it. Immediately after Trump took office, there was all this fear mongering amongst immigrants that Trump was going to be throwing everybody in jail and having a gulag, and you didn't want to come to this country anymore. And then people realized, hey, there's obviously a Democratic Party. There's limits to what he's going to be able to do. It's still the promised land, and here they come. It just took a little bit of time for them to realize that, those opportunities were still there, and our border is still wide open.
Yeah. And,
However, sorry, go ahead.
It goes back to something I think that we talked about on the program maybe like a month ago as well. Currently with the Border Patrol, they're losing people at a quicker rate than they are gaining people. People are resigning from the Border Patrol at a faster rate than they are able to sign people on. And a lot of that problem is, as well as like a lot of people, some of the best qualified people that could enter the Border Patrol, they want to go into ICE as well, because ICE is actually working for the first time in a long time. Mm-hmm. So like we are seeing like a problem with actually having more Border Patrol agents. And the whole thing, every single Republican, or at least the good ones, were saying like, oh, I'll increase the Border Patrol by 5,000. I'll double it. But like you can't do that if people aren't actually applying for these positions. And it's hard to, make it into the Border Patrol. Like you have to go to Border Patrol school, and it's, it's an extensive program. It's hard to fill these
suggesting that
things.
we lower the standards in order to get more people in there?
That's not necessary.
No.
It's an 8-month program, and I went through it. You have to learn. It's a Spanish intensive program. There's a lot of PT, and it isn't easy. But we part of the reason why people are leaving the Border Patrol is because under the Obama administration, we stopped enforcement, and people didn't want to do the job anymore. They felt like they weren't doing what they were trained and being paid to do. There was no more enforcement, and it's taken a while to get that started up again. Also, there's a lot of turnover with Border Patrol officers transitioning to other jobs within federal law enforcement, because there's been a lot of drop-off there. The FBI lost over 500 supervisory special agent positions during the Obama administration.
I didn't know that.
Yeah, and that's because those guys realized how politicized the Justice Department had become, and they didn't want to work there anymore. But they have to fill those positions, and they're filling them with Border Patrol. DEA as well.
And another reason is because of the fact that there's been so much of a drop-off, a lot of the government's focus has been on removing people already here rather than stopping people from coming in. Like you were saying, ICE is finally being able to do their jobs. Another problem with that, and this is one of the things that I believe it was the ICE union brought up when they filed a complaint with Trump
a couple weeks ago,
which Trump did meet with them to talk about their grievances. The fact that there are so many judges, especially in Texas, that have such a backlog of immigration cases for people that are already here.
You mean immigration judges?
Yeah, immigration
NTAs,
judges.
notice to appears, absolutely.
A lot of those judges are very left-wing liberal judges, and they're letting people get off.
Well,
and much larger numbers than is expected.
This is the system. When someone is picked up on the border illegally by Border Patrol, they are incarcerated and taken to see a judge immediately, very, very quickly. And the judge has to ask them whether or not they want expedited removal, which means, do you want to go back to your country right now, or do you have fear? Tienes temor. Do you have fear of political, that you're going to be injured because your political beliefs? Do you want to request amnesty? They have that option. And if those people say yes, they're given something called a notice to appear. They're handed that to them. Now, before Obama, those people were kept incarcerated until their notice to appear. When Obama came into office, those people were given that form, and it was used as a visa to leave. Mm-hmm. And how many of them do you think showed up for their hearing?
You wouldn't show up.
None of them. And that's a huge issue right now. And that's why our cities, especially in Texas, are flooded with illegal immigrants. We have checkpoints about 20 to 30 miles outside of every border city. And
I've gone through them.
I've gone through them many times.
Their notice to appear can get them through that, and it's a disaster. And that, again, is immigration enforcement. We have to get back to enforcing the laws that we have before we really want to take a look at changing them.
And and another hard part with like the Border Patrol is just like, to take on that job, you need to live near the border, and it's for a lot of places it's remote. So if you can transfer out to somewhere out, if you can transfer out to some other government, job that is in a bigger city, you're going to do that as opposed to wanting to live in New Mexico. So people do that. It's difficult, and this is why building a goddamn wall will mitigate a lot of these problems, because the wall doesn't care about going home to its family. It just stays there.
That's a very good point.
And that's why, I think a lot of the people that are on the Border Patrol, I would assume, probably don't have families for that simple reason. No one wants to be away from their family. And if you're someone who wants to start a family, you might not want to do it.
There's a problem here. With Border Patrol and immigration, people do not want to live in Laredo. They don't want to live in McAllen. They don't want to live in Brownsville. They don't want to live in Eagle Pass, and they don't want to live in Las Cruces. So what happens is the Justice Department has to hire people that are from those communities because they get to go home. And so those people don't mind living there. But what that does is it increases illegal activity because they have relatives on the other side,
right?
And there's that temptation then that your suegro al otro lado, your cousin over there, knows a drug dealer, and if you're working on the bridge, if you just look away this way at midnight when that car comes across, your family's going to get $100,000. So the Justice Department has investigators down there constantly looking into these people because nobody that joins immigration who lives in St. Louis wants to go to Laredo. They don't usually have a choice, but they don't want to do it. So they hire a lot of locals. And that's the way it is. And also, they don't have to pay to teach a lot of those people Spanish. They can test out and come back early to work. That's from personal experience, I can tell you.
And I don't want to go too much of a tangent here, but back during the oil boom, especially in West Texas, early 1900s, when people were out there, they said there was a lot of crime going on because there was a lot of alcohol and it was all men. So you know what the Texas government hired people to do?
What?
They literally hired women, young single women, to go over there and start dating those guys.
Wow.
And I tell you, there's probably a lack of single women in those rural areas as well. So our solution to get more people to join the Border Patrol is saying, don't worry.
Government-issued girlfriend.
The government will issue you a girlfriend when you get there.
Well, what if you're a transgender and you don't know if you want a girlfriend or a boyfriend? What do you do then? Are we going to have boys down there too?
No, that's what we send in Madagascar.
Options.
Options is right. You got to have that drop-down menu for options. There's got to be that drop-down menu nowadays in our society.
No, we'll just send them to the California sector.
Oh yeah,
Calexico. Isn't there somewhere where they actually do have like government-issued girlfriends? I feel like there's a country that does that.
Yes, Russia did for some time.
Yeah. It's a good gig, I guess, if you can get it, but it's not something I need either. So
we're getting too off topic. So
let's
move on.
There is one thing I wanted to mention that is off topic, but before I have to leave, I wanted to mention to you guys and your listeners, there's been continued talk about North Korea. The important issue revolving North Korea, and I know you two gentlemen know this already, is the delivery system. Okay, people, every single time the North Koreans explode a bomb or shoot up a missile, everybody gets worried that Hawaii is going to disappear off the map. It's not going to happen. The Iranians and the North Koreans have a whale of a trouble trying to put together a delivery system. It is not easy to attach a nuclear warhead to a missile delivery system that's going to be accurate in its GPS location, and it's just not easy to do. We can do it, the French can do it, the Russians can do it, the British, and the Chinese, although they haven't really been tested. So don't be so concerned about the North Koreans unless you live in Japan or South Korea, because then you don't really need to have much of a missile delivery system to hit those places from Pyongyang or wherever it is that facility where they test from. But that is the important issue there, is that delivery system. It's what the Iranians want, and it's what the North Koreans want. And by the way, they're out there trying to buy it right now. They're out there trying to buy it from the Russians and the Chinese and the Indians. And, they're here too as well. So something to keep in mind.
Yeah. But with that, let's go on to some election stuff. This is kind of brief because we went over the big election. But do you want to touch on that first thing we have here, Bobby?
Yeah, the first thing is just a quote that we have that I just wanted to go over. Steve Bannon this week said, quote, "There is a special place in hell for Republicans who do not back Trump." I agree 100%.
Yeah.
Well, I agree too, but my goodness, we've got a whole line of people heading to hell then, don't we?
Mm-hmm.
And what's funny is the people back Trump.
Yeah.
It's the political establishment that doesn't, and they are petrified of the media. That's the key. They are petrified that they're going to come home for a town hall meeting, and the media is going to be there with cameras, and the Democrats are going to have to send some operatives there who say, "You killed my baby when you voted against Obamacare," and all of a sudden someone's running against him for election. That is exactly how it works. So it's the political establishment here that is putting the knife, the proverbial knife in in Trump's back, as far as I'm concerned.
Now this ties into the next thing that I have here.
Yeah.
Which in regards to President Trump and the elections next year. The Washington Post is reporting that Trump has huge plans to be out campaigning in the 2018, in both the primaries and the midterms.
This is what we told him, this is early on, this is what we were saying he should do.
Now, apparently, in the last couple of months, Trump has met up with 116 different candidates running for House, Senate, and gubernatorial races, and he is looking to spend as much time as possible campaigning for some of these individuals.
Well, where has he been? I've been waiting for him. I mean, I am the Trump candidate. You won't find another candidate in this domestic United States that is more pro-Trump agenda than me. And I've been trying my best to get a hold of him and Bannon, but, I think they see Texas as a safe place. They don't really, this seat is a safe Republican
seat. They see your district as a safe district, which, I mean, for all intents and purposes, pretty much is.
But the people running against me are not safe Trump voters.
Right.
I can assure you of that.
Right.
Yeah.
And they will look and they will go like this, put their finger in the air and see which direction is my political fortunes blowing today.
And, this is what this is what we were saying back months and months and months ago that Trump should do. He should be out there holding campaign rallies for senators, even for minuscule congressmen in safe districts.
Absolutely.
He should be out there. Get those people out to vote. Get everyone out to get.
I don't know that Trump realizes that a safe district isn't just a Republican district, because we have this problem with electing Republican congressmen who go to Washington and are not going to support his agenda. And from the word go, they aren't going to support his agenda, because you have to have courage. You have to have the courage of your convictions, and people don't. They have the courage of their safe seat, and that's what matters to them. And so you need to look for candidates that have taken term limit pledges, that make it clear they understand what the Founding Fathers intended and will not stay in D.C. for 20 years. And I would think that Trump knows that, and hopefully he's going to recognize that and support candidates across the board who are going to support him.
Definitely so.
And, talking about close races that Trump can get involved in, that goes into the next story that we have here for the election segment, and that is there's a representative in Nevada who's been up to a little nefarious stuff. A Ruben Cahuin. Have I pronounced that name right?
You did.
He's a victim of the Me Too stuff, Me Tooism. He's he's the Democrat representative for Nevada's 4th district.
Which, if you don't know, Nevada's 4th district is essentially everything in the center of the state.
Yeah, it's like central Nevada.
North of Las Vegas, south of Reno and stuff.
Oh, you mean Area 51?
That whole, nothing but desert and stuff.
So only the little green guys are going to be voting for him.
Yeah, a reported on December 1st, a former campaign finance aide to him quit in 2016 after she said that the congressman made unwanted advances upon her and touched her inappropriately. Now, just going to our little database where we keep all these races.
I'm bringing it up right now as well.
The district that we're talking about is D+3, and the representative they had before Lil Rubin here was a Republican. So this isn't exactly a safe bet district.
I mean, as we've been saying, anything between about a D+5 to an R+5, we personally label as close.
+3, this is very possible.
Yeah.
Especially if your party...
If you can have, I don't really want to say a red wave, but, if you can have Republicans,
if you can show up.
if you can get people out to vote, you can get people, learn from your mistakes in Alabama, get your people out to vote. The Democratic Party is still broke. They still have no message. They still have no money. They're not going to be able to afford to focus on just one or two seats. You can take advantage of some of that. Get the right candidates in there. You can win.
Well, that is the key. We've got a Democrat running in District 21 who's already raised almost $300,000, and he pretends to be quite a moderate. In fact, someone who I know who knows him well said that he was a Republican until very recently. And if we don't get a candidate running against him who's going to inspire the people to come to the polls, Republicans will stay home, and we might actually lose the seat to the Democrats. Yeah. It is about getting good candidates in there that can inspire people to get out and vote.
And what's interesting about that is, we've gone over our database here. If you look at every single Republican district, that's R+0 to R+ whatever.
5.
Everything above R+10 in the entire country, for every Republican district, there's like over 100 of them. Only one of those is held by a Democrat. And that is a district in Minnesota where the guy has been in there since like the 1990s. In a Republican district, he's a Democrat.
Yeah.
Your district, District 21, is R+10 as well. So...
I don't think it's going to be the Armageddon that people are saying it's going to be. I think on that note, gentlemen, I'm going to have to sign off and let you guys continue without me.
All right.
Okay.
Well, thank you for coming on.
Yeah, most definitely.
You guys are great. I always enjoy visiting with you. I learn so much when I come here, and this is why I try and listen as well. And, I did make sure that a lot of people were tuning in today.
Cool. Thank you so much.
Thank you.
So,
our friend Eric Burkhart has just left. Now it's just going to be me and you, Bobby. We're going to get through the rest of the stuff. We still probably have, 30 minutes, 45 minutes worth of stuff. We're going to go quick through it. But, so we were just talking about what Rubin, has been up to with resigning. That plays into further some rumors that are going around right now. Now, these are just rumors, so this may or may not happen, but it's expected this next week that currently the Washington Post and CNN are sitting on like 40 similar Congress sexual harassment claims.
Amazing.
Apparently, their phones have been going off the hook. Their journalists have been tweeting about this and saying like, yeah, we're getting like contact all the time now about that stuff. I think because people have seen that, Roy Moore could be defeated because of sexual allegations. Mm-hmm. It's coming up for a lot of people now. So, Me Too and Me Tooism is coming in hard. So expect to see something next week. I mean, we just went over another guy that did it. It seems nearly, a third or half of these congressmen have something in their past like it. I think it just comes with the power of Congress,
Now, do you think those people will resign, or do you think those people will just not seek re-election?
I think a lot of them will resign. I think it's hard to stay in that office for that long and justify it.
Al Franken, he has to.
He hasn't done it yet, though.
He has to, though.
Yeah.
He's not going to get reelected. Minnesota's a swing state. If he doesn't resign, he's not going to get reelected next time around.
Yeah.
I'll guarantee you that.
It's going to be hard. I think it would still go to a Democrat if he did resign, and I think they could keep that, in the election.
If the Democratic...
Minnesota's still very blue. I've lived in Minnesota for times in my life. It's something else, but
it's switching over slowly, but
yeah.
Hopefully they do resign. But if they say not seeking re-election, that means that we've got some targeted districts on our hands.
Yeah.
On both sides.
And so far, most of these have been coming from Democrats, so I'm not too miffed. I let them destroy themselves to their own standards. It's a smart strategy. So let's go on to the bottom of the stack stuff we want to talk about. And we kind of wanted to keep it brief, but because this first one is such like a big thing people have been talking about, and that is the FCC has repealed net neutrality this week, despite some widespread protesting. Now, Bobby, I want to get your opinion or your perspective. How have you seen people be reacting to net neutrality?
Most regular people I know are very mad about the decision to repeal net neutrality.
Yes.
Most people I know that are really smart and very knowledgeable about politics tend to be glad that net neutrality is going away.
Yeah. Now, what is net neutrality? It's something that was instituted under the Obama era in regards to internet.
In 2015, it's only
it had only been around since 2015, so it's been around 2 years. And prior to net neutrality, there was no like government regulation on the internet whatsoever. So net neutrality, you can see it as the initial intrusion to regulate the internet. And the problem with having it there is, once it's already there, it only encourages people to regulate the internet further. So by even having this in there, we likely hold that possibility for the future. So if you don't want government intrusion into the internet and nationalizing it, you should be against net neutrality, which is why I generally am. Now, I understand why people are kind of thinking this way. Okay, net neutrality, it sounds like it protects you from the evil corporations,
But what does it actually do, though?
What does it actually do?
Because I know essentially what it does, but obviously there's a lot more to it than that.
It kind of requires... It requires, like, different internet providers to, like... Okay, let me explain it this way.
It requires your internet service provider to treat web traffic evenly.
Evenly.
Whether that be Amazon.com you're going to, or whether that be some porn website, or just some random website that only has 2 visitors a year.
So here's the thing. There are certain places on the internet that are using more internet bandwidth than most places.
Netflix uses like a third of the internet in the US.
Ton, because
it's like a third.
Streaming video is very costly to do. And Netflix does it all the time, and they aren't charged any sort of different rate than anyone else, as you just mentioned, Bobby. So that's the net neutrality part. So the fear is, oh no, they're going to start charging more for Netflix. I think that instinctually is why people are freaking out the most.
But if you understand free market economics, and I don't want to be an autistic libertarian here, but it kind of, if you just understand...
It controls for this.
If you understand supply and demand, if anything, that would make things cheaper for you.
Yeah.
Because if you're Netflix thinking, crap, there's a possibility internet service providers might be charging us more money since we use more bandwidth, maybe that should incentivize us to do what we do using less bandwidth.
Yeah.
Or, figure out ways, develop innovation.
But here's the thing. There was Netflix streaming prior to this.
Yeah.
And it wasn't any different to where it is now. Like, that possibility is there, but, like, they haven't intruded upon them. Like, to not work with Netflix is, like, unheard of for an internet ISP. Knowing that's a third of all data.
Imagine if your internet service provider gets labeled as the only internet service provider in the area that wants to charge Netflix extra money.
Yeah.
That's not going to go well for you either. So again, supply and demand, free market economics works when you allow it to work. This is a good example. Nothing bad is going to happen. And I've seen so much fear-mongering about this thing.
So I wanted to go back a second to the people that do believe it.
Right.
Why do they believe it? Why do they believe it's a good thing? They see it as the government's protecting me from evil corporations that are going to intrude upon me. And if I get rid of net neutrality, the corporations are going to abuse that lack of government interference. That kind of sounds reasonable. But you need to keep in mind the big evil corporations support net neutrality.
Yeah.
Facebook supports net neutrality. YouTube supports net neutrality. Netflix supports net neutrality. Google supports net neutrality. Pretty much every big dog in the race does. So, I've been seeing them say, like, oh, there's going to be more internet censorship if we get rid of net neutrality. No, we are at the peak of internet censorship in the United States right now under net neutrality. So, it's just a lot of misguided fears, and it's really hard to explain, and I'm obviously not the best, but I've been having to prepare myself for what I wanted to say all week about this, and, this is about as much as I can make of it. I personally don't care too much either or, but I wanted to see it go.
I've seen some really smart people that I follow say that they've spent hours researching net neutrality and they still haven't formed a correct opinion on it.
Yeah,
it's such a complicated issue, but I think you were saying this earlier to me. You might have just said it, and I might have just not heard you say it. You had a really good quote earlier that the people who I don't like support it.
Yeah.
Therefore, I'm going to be against it.
Yeah.
And I agree with you on that.
Yeah, why should I do things that my opponents want? It shouldn't be to my behest. It's just, how you got to view these things. But at the end of the day, it's not a big issue. It's not like I have done anything about it. I haven't even gotten into debates with people about it. I just have watched what's been going on. And
also, the thing is, though, it's such a serious thing, though. The FCC building, during the debate and the vote to get rid of it, got a bomb threat.
Yes.
That's how serious people are taking this.
That Ajit Pai, the FCC chairman that
guy's
got rid of it.
awesome.
Yeah, he's pretty cool. He has received tons of death threats and legitimate threats. And it's just I was thinking about this when I was driving up here, for the podcast. I was thinking about this net neutrality thing and how people want to kill people over it. It's just, I can't imagine someone being that incensed to the degree of oh, Netflix could cost more, I'll kill someone. If it's for the greater good. But they see it as a greater good to do it.
Yeah.
That's their mindset. It's not something I would do, but there's some freaks in this country. Wanna go on to the next thing that we have, though?
Yeah, go ahead.
So we have one other thing before current year college craziness, and this is...
this is a huge story.
But
this is such a much bigger story than people think it is.
Yeah, it's a huge story, but it hasn't really been played up in the media whatsoever.
That's why.
And that's why.
You think they're going to talk about this? Hell no.
Yeah.
This should be the biggest... This should be a bigger than Watergate type thing.
Because the admissions to it are crazy. So
you might as well say what happened.
Yeah. There is a high-profile feminist attorney. Her name is Lisa Bloom, and she represented 4 of the sexual, assault allegations against Trump. 4 of those women she represented. 2 of whom came forward. 2 stayed hidden because of fear, media, or whatever. Mm-hmm. Okay. But she, it's come out now that she talked to them, and there's audio clips. Have you heard these audio clips?
I have not heard the audio clips.
Yeah, so there's audio clips of this. She told the women she could arrange paid media appearances and secured cash donors from them in exchange for public accusations. So,
have you seen the dollar amount that they're saying?
Yeah. She's told one woman that she could get out as much as $750,000 for her accusation, and she promised another one of the women there that she could pay off her mortgage. So she's dangling a big carrot in front of people's faces. And there's a saying, it goes, you run a $100 bill through a trailer park, mm-hmm. and you get people singing. She's running a lot more than $100 bills through a...
She's running $100 bills, a free car, and a new dog.
Through the trailer park.
Mm-hmm.
So, there's reasons why Trump received so many of these sexual allegations, and there's also reasons why they haven't continued afterwards, because there's no standard for a case. If this is how it runs, there's obviously no standard for a case. We were just talking about Me Tooism during the election stuff. I just said that there's at least 40 congressmen that could potentially be leaked next week. I can confirm that. Not that that's going to happen next week, but a lot probably will.
Get a couple of them.
Well, probably you'll see a couple. But everyone's seen how powerful this stuff is, where you just have to believe whatever a woman says, and the money for this is so great.
Yeah,
because it can it could get someone out of running again.
In the text message that they found between her, she said that and she said this, Lisa Bloom herself, said that a pro-Clinton super PAC might be willing to provide financial support as well.
So it's not just Lisa Bloom, this rogue agent. She is working in tandem with the Democrats to fund these women, to accuse, well, in her case, Donald Trump, but they do this also with all of the politicians, including, let's go back to something very recent, Roy Moore.
Who his attorney, or the one woman, the Beverly Nelson who had the yearbook, her attorney was Gloria Allred. In her relation to Lisa Bloom, she's her mother.
Yes.
All these people are connected.
Yeah. But if you don't understand this, you're just in the dark, and you think that I should be giving these things credibility. But I really don't at this point. My thing, and this has always been my standard, and I don't change this for politicians, is if you're accused, let's just take him to court. I'm going to vote based on the presumption of they're not guilty. Because why should I create an indictment on something that might not be true? That just seems like it's intellectually honest. The only people that would want to force you, and I've argued with people throughout the week, especially conservatives about this, is just why should I automatically presume guilt? To what interest for my vote does that benefit me? It doesn't whatsoever. And that's the standard we always need to take with this. And I hold that standard for Democrats too. I didn't presume Al Franken did it. Now, I presumed a little stronger than Roy Moore because I have seen photos of him touching a woman.
Right.
But that's honest. These people are so dishonest with Me Tooism, and that's why it's blowing up right now.
And also, it's also a boy who cried wolf thing, but the exact opposite.
With a lot of money in the line.
If you keep crying wolf, 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 and there are wolves, eventually you're going to cry wolf, and they're going to assume there's a wolf when there's nothing there. Meaning, there's going to be some innocent people that get taken down because someone made up an accusation if people keep believing the accuser.
Now, here's the thing. It also, to a large degree, is correct. Mm-hmm. These sexual harassment things are happening with a lot of people in politics. It is common. And I'm not denying that there's Republicans not doing it. I think a lot are. And if it's legitimate, that's why I say let's just let's take this to a trial. But I don't take allegations seriously if they're not willing to take it that far. And there's been so many cases where they don't. They should be suing them, if they're accusing them of these things.
If you know for a fact you didn't touch them, or you didn't sexually assault them or harass them or anything, and you know for a 100% fact that it's completely made up, you should immediately be hitting them with slander.
Yeah.
Cases.
And, look back to Roy Moore. We had that, Beverly Nelson lady you were talking about, the yearbook lady, and the yearbook was shown to be 100% bullshit. She's not going to face any repercussions for that.
Arguably, he lost an election because of her.
Arguably.
He should be suing the shit out of her.
The level of gaslighting that she caused just to Republicans by being someone accusing Roy Moore kept people home. And if those people... Okay, Alabama, turnout for the Democrats, huge. If there was any semblance of a good turnout for Republicans, they would have overcome it easy. That's the truth.
You only needed to get
20,000
more.
And have you seen the past special elections numbers? Do you remember what Sessions had? He received over 1 million votes
when he was unopposed.
Yeah. Roy Moore didn't receive 1 million votes. What was it, 500,000, 600,000?
It was 650 to 600. I think Doug Jones had 671 and Roy Moore had 650.
Yeah.
Which, if you think about that, a difference of 21,000 votes over 1.2 million, over 1.3 million votes cast.
That's how powerful these sexual allegations are, because it keeps enough Republicans at home when you do it. And if you do a lot of them, you can. Now, Trump was the exception, but I think the exception is that's the presidency.
The thing is, though, it's the exception, but it was the one that blew up, so you thought that was the rule.
Yes. But we're not playing by any sort of rules. Right. You need to... Now we know with a lot of these big elections, we're going to be facing a lot of media scandal heading into these things to a degree that hasn't been seen before.
If there's a Republican in a close district 2 months before the election, watch out.
Yeah, you're going to see it happen a lot. Now, how many times can they do the same thing?
And that's the thing, though. Look at what it took to defeat Roy Moore. Doug Jones had to outspend him 17-1.
Yeah.
Roy Moore had 2 straight months of front-page media coverage of these sexual assault allegations. It was constant. You had 100% of the media behind you. You had 0 people in your own establishment party supporting you. And you only lost by 1.5%.
So close.
And if you're trying to do that to multiple candidates at the same time across the country,
you do not have the same power.
You can't do it. That's what I say is, we said this already when we were talking about Roy Moore at the beginning of the program. You can't use this as a foreshadowing of the future. This was a one-off thing.
This was an exceptional election with a lot of time to build to it. When we head into the elections next year, they're going to be boom, boom, boom. The first primaries start out here in Texas, and that's in, March?
So if anything happens to people in Texas...
And there's going to be elections all the way through to the end of the year.
Remember,
for primaries and midterms.
Stuff might not be coming out during primaries.
Yes.
They're going to wait till midterms.
Yes. So there's going to be more for the midterms, obviously.
Yeah.
But people are going to use this stuff all the way through.
Yeah, people are going to come out in the primaries, especially if you have a...
they're going to try and get these...
If you have a MAGA candidate that is against a establishment Republican, it looks like the MAGA candidate's slightly ahead, I wouldn't be surprised if the Republicans pull people out, drag the $100 bill through the...
Oh, the Republicans love this too, like we're going over it. There's plenty of Republicans that are glad Roy Moore lost.
Yes.
And they had interest in him losing. That's why Jeff Flake sent his $100 check to Doug Jones.
It's also signaling too. But...
It is signaling, but it's an insane reality that we live in. But like I just said, it's not going to work the same. There's going to be too many elections running at the same time. Every single House race, every single House seat is up for re-election. And if it's not, a primary challenge, the incumbent who might be going through the primary unopposed, what's stopping him getting accused during the primaries?
Right.
All the way leading up. It doesn't have to be 2 weeks, 2 months beforehand. That's what we've seen with Roy Moore and Trump, but
it's their October
people
surprise.
Are just throwing this stuff out now. Like I just said, in the last segment. So it's going to be something. I don't know how we get through this patch, but I think it's really going to change politics a lot.
Hey, you might see... It's possible you might see a rise in evangelical Christians running, because they're the only ones who can be trusted not to do so, or at a lesser rate. I don't know. Maybe this is God judging us for...
Okay. We have very different stances on religion, me and you, and that's something we talk about.
I'm joking, and
yeah.
You know that, right?
Oh, okay. I was getting afraid. I was
being sarcastic at the same time being sort of true.
Okay. To be clear, the evangelical candidate in the Republican Party
can't win anymore.
Cannot win anymore.
Even in primaries, cannot win anymore. I was telling you this earlier. There's 3 types of Republicans out there. There's your GOP establishment cuck rhinos. There's the MAGA type Steve Bannon people, and there's the evangelical Christian right-wing voter. That third part has shrunken to be such a small part of the party anymore.
Because they're just Trump.
Yeah. And so if you have a person like Roy Moore, that's the type of guy he was. He wasn't an establishment. He wasn't even the Trump guy. Even though he had Steve Bannon's endorsement.
He liked Trump, but he was an evangelical candidate.
That's the type of candidate that he was. That candidate is not going to win you anything. The MAGA candidates are the ones that are going to win you stuff.
Now, when you say a MAGA candidate, I think we need to specify what you push, though.
Correct.
When you're the MAGA candidate, you need to be talking about immigration. Mm-hmm. Okay? I knew this going in. I didn't initially want Roy Moore to win the primary. I wanted Mo Brooks because he's solid in immigration. You look at his stuff in our database, it's great. Have you ever listened to him talk? It's great. I listened to the Laura Ingraham show the day before the Roy Moore election. Okay? He would have been perfect. But why is he perfect? Because he sticks to the platform.
Mm-hmm.
People will vote for the guy that talks strongly about immigration. MAGA was a referendum on our immigration. if anything. There's a lot of components to it, but it always has to start with the immigration. And if Trump talked more about immigration, it'd probably be better for him, because I think that's what we all have to focus on at this point.
Numbers USA gives Mo Brooks a A+ in their immigration grade.
Yeah. Could you imagine if that guy got in the Senate? Now, in 2020, when Doug Jones has to, run for re-election, Mel Brooks will probably sweep that.
Mm-hmm. He'll probably get 77% of the vote.
Yeah, especially once they start seeing Doug Jones the way he's voting now. But, these are the candidate prototypes you have this choice. You have 3 choices going into these primaries. And if these guys want to win, they have to change a lot of the stuff they've doing. Because the MAGA thing, remember, hasn't existed prior to Trump. Mm-mm. To the degree that it is now. It's only a Trump thing. It's purely new.
You need to focus on immigration. You need to push nationalism or populism.
Yeah.
The type of things that got Trump elected. You need to push anti-establishment views. You need to do that. If you cook out on even one of those issues, your chances of winning is significantly decreased.
But it's also, we were just talking with Eric Burkhart on the show. It's hard to be that guy and
difficult.
Get the money. Like, he talks extensively to us about, what he's dealing with. And we don't air that dirty laundry and stuff, but, he mentioned that there's all these primary candidates where there was none prior. He was the only guy challenging Lamar Smith. Every single one of these guys has a lot of money back in them. That's just how deep the swamp goes. That's how much politics is. Okay, the swamp is deep.
Yeah, and if there is an establishment candidate that, let's say they get accused of sexual assault and then announce they're not going to seek re-election, the party's going to try to find an establishment candidate to run for that seat.
There'll be several guys.
And I wouldn't be surprised if there are some establishment candidates that are picked by the party to run against current establishment candidates.
Yeah.
To get them out of there.
So the money is going to be, thick and thin. Everyone's going to be spending a lot. The Republicans have a lot of money, and that's the interesting part, because
the Democrats still don't have any money.
That's not exactly good for us that they have a lot of money, but it's good if we can win these primaries. Yeah. So we'll have to see.
It's good for the general election.
Yeah. Let's. With that said, though, let's go into some current year college craziness.
The racist, sexist, homophobic, xenophobic.
You're fucking a white male!
The assumption that women are naturally better caregivers is part of patriarchy.
Die, cis, scum.
You will not divide us! You will not divide us! You will not divide us! You will not divide us!
It's time for some current year college craziness.
Current year college craziness, the segment that keeps on giving every single week. We talk about the crazy stuff happening on college campuses, and there's some doozies this week, Bobby.
No, not good. Not good.
Some really crazy stuff, kind of like some festive stuff, because Christmas is coming soon.
We got a couple of Christmas ones.
Christmas stuff. We're catching it right at a good time. It's like finals for everyone.
Yeah.
And everyone's about to be off on college, so it's really fitting the season. And the first story I want to talk about is something that happened in California. UC Berkeley, somewhere.
Of course.
A place we've talked about so many times on this program. It seems like, it's where it's happening. So the Berkeley College Republicans, which, I'm surprised I wouldn't want to be one out there.
I would not want to publicly be known as a member of that organization.
That sucks. But they held a vigil for Kate Steinle. We talked about Kate Steinle, the lady who was killed by an illegal alien who walked. Mm-hmm. I mean, he got a weapons charge on him. But they're appealing that right now. Yeah. So he might get acquitted there. And I expect him to, really. So they held a vigil for her. I got some quotes. They did it at Spruill Hall on campus. I got some quotes from the vice president of the Berkeley College Republicans on the whole matter. Quote, "The burden of tragedy no longer solely rests on the shoulders of her family, but on the shoulders of every American," Naheed Tahamas said. However, when illegal immigration policies kill Americans, we are told that we must remain silent. The media lectures us on how we are politicizing a death. The media and our politicians want to erase Kate's name and story from history. It's on us to speak the name of America's lost daughter, Kate Steinle. Really, really powerful stuff, you know. But
so what ended up happening, though?
Yeah. So Tomas said during the visual, protesters arrived on the scene and became loud. They started shouting during the remarks they were doing throughout the visual. They were yelling stuff like, "In the name of humanity, we refuse to accept a fascist regime." He said you couldn't make out everything, but things of that ilk. So you could imagine like racist, xenophobe, things of that matter was yelled. Fascist, things like that was yelled at them. And also they saw that they had put up a bunch of posters for this event, and they found that these were all like taken down and thrown in the garbage, and some were just like they made it real obvious, like they took it down and they stuffed it in like the top of the garbage, but like didn't push it all the way in.
Right.
So like if you walk by, you would see her face. So like they really made it known that like, hey, we're taking this down and we want you to see us taking it down. So really messed up stuff happening out there. That's the level of college craziness that's going on in Berkeley these days.
I'm going to say one thing about...
Which is like a top-flight institution, apparently.
I'm going to say one thing about UC Berkeley. And any future employers who are listening to this, go right ahead and you can quote me on this. If I'm ever put in charge of hiring anybody for anything, and I see that that person went to UC Berkeley, I'm going to ask them if they were in the college Republicans. If they say no, I'm not going to hire them. I don't care how qualified they are for the job. I don't want anyone who goes to that university who doesn't have the balls to be in the college Republicans, which pretty much means everybody else.
Yeah.
I'm not going to want that person to be working for me. So future employers,
but
probably just screwed myself out of a couple jobs just now by saying that, but it's true.
But to the same degree, if you saw a guy who went to UC Berkeley and you asked him, were you in the college Republicans, and he says yes,
I would hire that guy.
Bring that guy on.
I would hire that guy on the spot.
He has been through some shit. Because we talk about this college.
I immediately know I can trust.
We talk about this college so much, it really shows some character to still stick it out there.
And if there happens to be a Evergreen College Republicans chapter,
you can come on too.
That person, I'll even prioritize hiring that person in that position.
So let's go on to my other story. You get the last two for this week.
Right.
The other story, as I said, it's kind of more festive with Christmas, coming up. So the University College of London, so we're talking about the United Kingdom, was forced to apologize after they had a tweet about dreaming of a white campus, and it was deemed racist by many of their students. The tweet was intended to let students know the campus was still open, as some parts of Britain were covered with up to 13 inches of snow. So the tweet read out, "Dreaming of a white campus, our campuses will be open and operating fully today, Monday, the 11th of December. So please make your plan in as. Please make your way in as planned. We can't guarantee snow, but we'll try. Hashtag snow day. Hashtag London snow."
So it's obvious they're talking about snow. There's no way you can, Granted, that first statement, dreaming of a white campus, ? I can understand how you'd be like, but the rest of it's obvious they're talking about snow.
But there was a lot of people that were mad because are you dreaming of a white campus in London, You know
who else dreamt of a white campus? Hitler, that's
Hitler,
who.
Yes.
Disgusting. Said by Jumail Jafar, a PPE student at Warwick University, who urged UCL to retract and apologize. Yeah, he sounds pretty British to me.
So this university did apologize. They had another tweet the next day. It went, "We chose our words very poorly yesterday. We were thinking of this song," and it's that song, "Dreaming of a White Christmas." And then, "We're sorry, and we'll choose our words more carefully in the future." Like, it seems like, I think, like, people know the song, It seems like people would catch up, "Are you dreaming of a white Christmas?"
Yeah.
And then it's just the, dreaming of a white campus like it's a little clever thing. But really pissed off some people, and they apologized. And they know they didn't mean that at all.
Of course.
But they're apologizing as though, like, oh, we didn't microaggress or something. Like, this is the degree to which people are cut, by... Like, it's like paper cut level thinness of, like, being, microaggressed.
The campus knows they didn't do anything wrong.
Yeah.
Even the people accusing them of wrongdoing know they didn't mean it the wrong way.
But the little paper cut of racism, because there was a little edge, because dreaming of a white campus, because snow is white, and the tweets about snow. I mean, come on.
Hashtag snow day, hashtag London snow. That doesn't tell you what they're referring to right there. I don't know.
These people are really oppressed if they get to complain about the oppression of tweets about snow and white campuses. It's insane. But why don't we go into your career in college craziness stories?
So the next one that I have also has to do with whites, except this time it is talking about white people. And that is a University of Northern Iowa professor in an academic journal is claiming that classroom civility promotes a white racial power. Did you know that, Enzo?
I didn't know that. That's some intense stuff.
Yeah, they said that in the article, the professor blasts the prevalence of whiteness-informed civility in college classrooms, saying that civil behavior reinforces the white racial power. They say that endeavoring to treat everyone the same, regardless of their race, for instance, functions to erase racial identity in an attempt to impose a race-evasive frame on race talk.
So...
kind of sounds like what the left is trying to do.
So, not being crazy, not being civil, that should be expected of people who are non-white.
Well, here, I'll just...
Because to be civil is to be white, and that's like ascribing them with standards that, like, would erase people's identity. That's what he's trying to say. It's just like, wow, this dude's fucking stupid, you know?
I'll read you a quote. So, C. Kyle Ruddick and Catherine B. Goslin said in the article, they're the names of the professors, that a particularly whiteness-informed society allegedly functions to assert control of space and create a good white identity. This civility can reinforce white privilege, Ruddick and Goslin argued, because civility within higher education is a racialized rather than universal norm, according to the field of critical whiteness studies. Later on goes to say, first, participants stated that they tried to avoid talking about race or racism with students of color to minimize the chance that they would say something wrong and be labeled racist. The professors reported, another way that participants described how they tried to be civil when interacting with students of color was to be overly polite or nice.
Because the accusation of racist is so heavy against these people.
Yeah.
They're walking on eggshells, but you're talking about how they have racial power because they want
who has the real racial power order. In that matter?
It's like the people, Voltaire, to know who rules over you, see who those that you can't, criticize. I'm paraphrasing that, but I don't think it's the white people that are above criticizing. That seems to be the entire basis of your professorship, Professor.
Yeah.
They like if they had white racial power, that wouldn't be allowed. Like
if they had white racial power, it would be students of color who are afraid to talk about race in front of white people.
Yeah, it's pretty insane.
See, Enzo, I saw someone on their graduation cap the other day.
Yeah,
had the Pan-African colors in a black power fist.
You
imagine if a white person had a swastika. You think that would go along very well?
No.
You think if someone had a white pride sticker or a white pride...
white power
painted, KKK, a Confederate flag even painted on their hat, you think they'd allow them to do that?
No.
Who has the real racial power? It's not white people.
Yeah. They assume, because in so many parts of the country, whites are the majority. I mean, you look at the past of this country, the majority is even more profound. That's just the reason why, professorships are filled with white people, because the country was indicative of that. To get to be a professor, it takes a lot of education. And well,
education and intelligence are two different things.
Yeah, and they're fighting so hard to diversify education, because this is what he's talking about, having he's applying it to his experience in the colleges.
Yeah,
that's pretty obvious. So they're fighting so hard, all these colleges, to say hire more African American women or Latinx or stuff. To where you're getting to the point to where that's such a small number of people in the college system that are getting into professorships and adjuncts. They're all fighting over the same people. There's not enough people to fill the demand of all these colleges that want to do this. But on the flip side, you have all these white people that are not being hired because they don't fit the diversity criteria. I mean, we've talked about job offers in colleges that have said don't apply if you're not a minority. That's a crazy reality, but in a lot of places where whites are a huge majority, 80-90%, how would you have the diversity naturally there of which they're trying to achieve? You're just not going to do that for every place. Mm-mm. So that's the perpetuating power that he's saying is holding him down. And this is what we're dealing with. People that just see white people and are angry about it at this point.
Well, I'll tell you something that people are also angry at, and that's a segue to our next story, and that is Christmas.
Yeah.
And specifically, this is at the University of Minnesota. We were talking about Minnesota earlier. So, Santa Claus, Christmas trees, and the colors red and green are examples of inappropriate religious iconography during the holiday season, according to a paper distributed during a, quote, respecting religious diversity event at that university. They also said that Jewish Hanukkah is targeted too, with menorahs in the colors blue and white also described as being, quote, not appropriate. The handout said, consider neutral-themed parties such as a winter celebration. The handout read, decorations, music, and food should be general and not specific to any one religion.
It is a non-specific religion holiday I think we can all get behind?
What's that?
Toyotathon.
Ah, yes.
I am sick of this political correctness. It's not happy holidays. It is happy Toyotathon.
Isn't it always Toyotathon, though? It's always Ford Truck Month.
No. It's Toyotathon, though. And that's the holiday that we can substitute.
Anyways.
But really, they're acting crazy.
The paper went on to say, our religious/spiritual beliefs and practices can play a key role in our identity, but can be off limits for discussion, especially in public places. It listed a dozen items that were, quote, not appropriate for gatherings and displays at this time of year, since they typically represent specific religious iconography.
Now, because I've University of Minnesota, I know
I can
Minnesota,
read these things off if you want to hear them.
I know Minnesota very well. I just want to tell you about these people. What they're doing is, Minnesota, they're bringing a lot of these Somali refugees, and some of them are getting into college now. So, Minnesota is extremely Christian religious white. Mm-hmm. So they just want to get rid of that entirely. So seeing Christmas stuff doesn't intimidate these refugees that they're bringing in.
Here's the full list.
That's entirely why.
Yeah, here's the full list. Santa Claus, angels, Christmas trees, stars of Bethlehem, dreidels, nativity scenes, bows/wrapped gifts, menorahs, bells, doves, red and green or blue and white/silver decorated themes, because red and green apparently is Christian and blue and silver apparently is Jewish. So that's the
exclusion to Jewish stuff is interesting as well, though, because they're a small minority. Mm-hmm. But again, I'm talking about these Somali refugees. They're Muslims. They follow Islam, and they don't have a favorable view of Jewish stuff either. So if you have Christian or Judaic stuff on campus, it will enrage them. That's what they're trying to avoid. Mm-hmm. And that's why you have to get rid of everything for everyone, because you wouldn't want to make them mad.
Christmas is canceled this year, folks.
Yeah.
That's essentially what they're saying. So I don't want to ban.
But like I know people that go to that university. That's the crazy part. And like,
do they want to ban it?
Well, the thing is, like, those people, I grew up with them originally in Wisconsin, and like a lot of those people are brainwashed. Like this level of stuff I'm talking about, like completely, they buy into it.
Wow,
that's just like what it's like to be in Minnesota. Which is why when we talk about Minnesota being a swing state, it does kind of blow my mind because, like, growing up, it was a huge bastion of like blue as well. You know, Wisconsin was as well, and it's interesting because I grew up when it was more Democrat, and now it's Republican. It's weird, but these things, the Midwest is like the wild card with stuff, I guess.
The Midwest is switching over slowly.
Yeah,
and Minnesota, being a more blue of that area, is going to be the last one, but it's pushing.
But you have to like mention the Somali dynamic because they've
part of the reason
tons.
why. Enough of those people were like, you know what, I don't want this shit here.
Yeah, there's like, I want to celebrate Christmas at university. Like that is like a really triggering experience for a lot of those, you know, guys out there, guys or girls. But like, that's going to show them like, oh wow, I should really question like what I'm told to believe in. I mean, you know, that's how these things work. And that's what's causing like a lot of these people to go right, even in the Midwest, which has always been a bastion of, you know, blue since I've grown up there.
You can have Christmas, or you can have a multicultural college. You get to pick one.
Yeah, that's pretty much the standard they're setting. I don't know. I think it's okay. We just put them all, but I guess we can't do that. That's not multiculturally, because that could be problematic, you know.
Maybe we should get rid of the people that are trying to get rid of those things. That's too simple a solution.
Occam's razor.
You want to ban Christmas? I'm gonna ban you instead.
I don't know, but let's go. Let's take the break. We'll come back. We just got a little bit for international, and we'll get out of here. So have a good one. We'll see you on the other side of the break. So welcome back from the break. Like I said, we just got a couple things to go into. We're going to start it off with the Middle East. There has been some discoveries, Bobby, of some, you know, ISIS weapon arsenals recently. Because as, you know, we talked about with Burkhart, ISIS in Iraq and Syria is essentially defeated. So now we're able to, you know, discover what was all there. And there's an institution called Conflict Armament Research. They do independent arms tracking on weapons. And they've been able to see where these weapons came in from and when they received them. And in a lot of these armaments, these arsenals of ISIS, they're finding American-issued weapons. You know, it wasn't just Americans, but like, for example, CAR found that one anti-tank missile sold to the U.S. Army made its way to ISIS in just 59 days. Because you can track these with serial numbers and like make numbers and model numbers and whatnot. So like, we were pretty much handing these people weapons. ISIS, the people that, you know, we had to talk about all campaign. Like, we need to defeat these people. And we were just giving them weapons. This is what was happening under Barack Obama in just 2 months. It's stunning, but a lot of people died because they got American guns. Now, you know, with arm trafficking, you can see that from all over. It goes into, in the report, how, like, a lot were found out of Bulgaria. A lot were found out of, you know, other countries. But the United States was a fundamental armor of ISIS.
Yeah, that's, I mean, is that really surprising? Are you really surprised when you hear this story?
No.
Not at all. I mean, we've been funding every single side. We've been selling weapons to every single side. I'm just glad the war is over. And, you know, what Trump should have done? He should have had a primetime live from the Oval Office thing saying, I'm announcing today that, you know, the victory, we're declaring victory against ISIS. They've been totally defeated, blah, blah, blah. That is how you get around the media not covering that type of stuff.
Yeah.
Just saying. Barack Obama did that a lot. Bush did that a lot. Clinton did that a lot. Reagan did that a lot. Trump hasn't really done that. He's done it for a couple of things. But this, something big like this, dude, I'm actually saying, Trump, you need to step up your game here, bro.
Because I think, Burkhart talked about how our involvement in Iraq really helped since Trump got back in there. Mm-hmm. But in Syria, we just left that alone for the most part. So I think he is being not so braggadocious, which is funny to say about Trump, because a lot of it was to do with the Russians and Syrians, just letting them do what they needed to do. I think Trump realized, and he talked about this during the campaign, if you let the Russians do what they want to do in Syria, they'll get rid of ISIS, and that's what happened.
Exactly.
But let's move on to some African stuff, since it turns out we're like suddenly these big African journalists.
I guess.
Yeah, the way that we interview people in South Africa now. We got some more ones coming we're going to release this next week, so if you like the South Africa, stay tuned for that stuff. But a country next to South Africa, Zimbabwe, what we're talking about, the former Rhodesia. The new Zimbabwe government, because Mugabe just got out of power after like 37 years in power. He was something like 93. Now they have President Emerson Mnangagwa, and he is saying that they're looking to return nationalized land from white farmers back to the white farmers. So like in 2000 in Zimbabwe, they've been doing this since like 2000, but 2000 particularly, they came in and they took all of the white farmers' lands and just gave it to the government by force with weapons. They came out there and just took it, and the whites had to leave. And now the new government wants to make amends for that, and they're actually looking to give it back. And there's like recent cases of them taking that. They go into particular in this article. I'm not going to outline them all for you, but they're actually making the step to like bring these people back because they realize like how bad it was for them. Zimbabwe, or the former Rhodesia, its agricultural output was the highest in all of Africa prior to Mugabe. And this is something that actually stood for a while, even under Mugabe, until they took the farms. But now Zimbabwe, which by itself could have fed all of Africa with its agricultural output, it has starvation problems, massive ones. The UN has to send billions of dollars of food aid to them. So it's good that Zimbabwe is looking to make these amends, and good stuff.
I like it. Hopefully they actually, do give the land back, that is. So.
Yeah. But, really good stuff, and knowing what I know of South Africa, Zimbabwe right now, it's good to have some good news out of there, because it's a lot bad.
Yeah, I bet. So, want to move to Europe?
Yes.
So, we only have one story out of Europe this week. Pretty slow news week for over there. But the United Kingdom is going to be banning some more stuff. And the thing they're banning this week is the traditional depictions of mothers in advertisements. So think back to your Norman Rockwell paintings of the 50s.
Yeah.
Women being housewives,
working in the kitchen,
up, cooking, cleaning, that sort of stuff.
Doing what my girlfriend's doing right now.
Yeah, I know. It smells really good right now. Can't wait to have that lasagna. But anyways, those type of women traditional gender role depictions are still really popular over in the UK.
Yeah.
For in advertisements, like newspapers, magazines, that sort of stuff, billboards. Not anymore. Because the decision to tighten the regulation was announced by the Committees of Advertising Practice, or CAP, this week. After a report published in the summer identified gender stereotypes in advertisements as a driver of inequality between men and women.
Those photos.
They released a statement saying, quote, "Wherever they appear or are reinforced, gender stereotypes can lead to mental, physical, and social harm, which can limit the potential of groups and individuals." They said depictions deemed problematic include family members creating a mess while a woman has sole responsibility of cleaning it up, and adverts such as a specific activity is inappropriate for boys because it is stereotypically associated with girls, or vice versa. So
this is kind of funny because, in some ways, I'm socially liberal, but in a lot of ways, I'm a traditionalist. And I would contend, to my viewpoint of, society, that it's antisocial to dissuade these self-evidently positive depictions. Because it shows family connection, cohesion.
Yes.
It shows care. It shows, people loving each other. my mom cooks a lot for me when I'm over there. You know, I know your mom does the same for you when you go home. Like, that's a very positive, loving thing. If there was more people in this country that experienced that than do now, we'd be better, objectively. And I would like to find someone that could fight me on that. Because, you know, it's stupid to argue these things. But this is the level of how gone the United Kingdom is. Because that's antisocial to them. To the point to where they see it as causing, like, inequality, you know? Because my patriarchies and my wage gaps.
Too.
Yeah. And they're doing it.
I don't like it.
They're getting rid of, like, even the conceptions. Like, you think of, like, what, like, Aristotle's, like, you know, like, the perfect object and, like, the hypothetical.
Right.
They want to get rid of that as well. And that's, like, the point of getting rid of this. Oh, what is the term Aristotle uses?
I forget.
Yeah, whatever.
You'll think of it later tonight, then.
Yeah, it'll cause you some problems. Let's go on to the last thing we got for the week.
So the last thing we got of the week is out of Asia. And you know how Kim Jong-un has been known to have people executed?
Yes.
Well, last story of the week is his top aide has been executed.
Oh, wow.
A key member of his inner circle, even. And his name was Huang Pang-so. I actually recognize this guy. Like, that's surprising. Every time you see pictures of him with, like, his staff members in military uniforms, like, standing around him, I recognize this guy. And he hasn't been seen in public since October 13th. Well, now we know why. Because Mr. Kim Jong-un over there decided to have him killed secretly, using his own little death squads. So
it's interesting, you know, we're obviously not privy to the inner workings of North Korea, but what do you think drove him to kill his top aide? I mean, because it's someone he defers to a lot, obviously.
Well, they said that he had a, quote, impure attitude towards Kim Jong-un's regime.
Impure attitude.
An impure attitude.
So that doesn't really tell us a lot.
As if he wasn't 100% on board with everything.
Yeah.
You know. Maybe he was only 90% on board. That might have been enough.
I think, I'm guessing. Maybe he wasn't on board with all these goddamn missiles all the time. It's also possible
I don't know. That his execution was a warning to everyone else, saying, hey, you want to end up like this guy?
Yeah.
Get on board.
He could have actually done nothing wrong.
He could have done nothing. It's very possible.
And he just wanted to make a message. Who knows? It's Kim Jong-un. He's not very stable.
Yeah, he's not exactly thinking things through here.
No.
So, yeah. Interestingly enough, and this is something I found funny, they said that Kim Jong-un has a planned visit to Mount Paektu over the weekend. Now, if you don't know, that's kind of like a very high up, like, snowy mountain that they have there that people can climb and go to the top and stuff in North Korea. For whatever tourist industry there is in North Korea, it's popular for their people to go there.
Okay.
You know, it would be like going like Pikes Peak or something like that here in the United States. You know, but back in 2015, the week before Kim Jong-un made his trip there, he had his former defense chief executed. Now this time, has his top aide executed, and then immediately goes to the mountain. I don't know if, you know, if that's enough to make a pattern or anything, but I would just like to point that out.
God, this stuff's like crazy as all hell. North Korea.
Hey, all I can say is if you're the guy planning his schedule and you say mountain trips coming up in the month and you're a close aide, you're going to be like, oh, who's it going to be?
It's why when Eric Burkhart talks about the North Korean threat not being that big, like, I believe him because, like, these people can't run anything.
No, they can't.
What kind of good administration's killing their top aide? Okay, at least Trump fires him as much as they say he's a dictator. He fires people he works with. That's fine. At least he's not executing them.
Hey, to the left, they see that as the exact same thing.
Yeah, pretty much psychologically. But yeah, that's the show for this week. I had a pretty fun time, especially when Eric was on.
Yeah, and the couple of links that I said that we were going to have in the description, we've got Eric Burkhart's CrowdPack website.
Yes.
Now, there's a high-level endorser out there that said that if you can prove to me that
someone you would like, we're not going to name names.
We're not going to name names. But there's a high-level person out there who he's been on the phone with, and he's told him, if you can prove to me that you've got the grassroots support, I will endorse you. That endorsement easily will add 5 to 10 points to poll numbers.
Yeah.
especially with that stamp of I'm this person's candidate.
Yes.
Okay? In order for that to happen, he doesn't necessarily need the money, but he needs proof of names.
Yes.
And by people donating to his web, you can donate $3 if you want, $5. I personally donated more than that. But just go to his website and donate what you can. Get your name out there. Prove that we've got the support that we know that we have for him.
Definitely.
So that website is in the description, the link to that. Please donate to Eric Burkhart.
Yes.
And the other website I have is magapill.com, which lists all of Trump's accomplishments organized by date and topic. So if you ever want to figure out or go back and look at some stuff that's happened.
Or show your liberal friends who say, what has Trump actually done? Show them. Because, it's the end of the year. We're kind of getting to a reflective stage. We're obviously going to do an episode that year in review, I'm
going to be pulling that straight from this website.
Yeah. Be thankful for what Trump has done this first year, because it's been a lot better than it has been in the past.
But other than that, I have nothing else to say.
The last thing I want to say is I just want to talk about what some of these upcoming midweeks are, so I can hype some people up.
Yeah.
We already have my interview with Lee Oxley, and she's with the South African Family Relief Project. It was a hell of an interview. We had some problems, obviously, because she's in South Africa. You could hear the chickens in the background, and there's a lot of wind coming through. But the stuff there is really powerful, because we talk about her work in the squatter camps full of Afrikaners. So, they're the white minority.
That episode's coming out Tuesday.
That'll come out Tuesday. Coming Thursday, we're going to have Hillary Planet Podcast episode number 3.
Yeah.
So if you don't know what Hillary Planet Podcast is, it's an alternate reality podcast where Hillary became the president, and we're the biggest supporters, and we do what we do, the show, the Sunday show, as though we're Hillary supporters. And it's very fun. It's crazy. We're in character. We got some good stuff planned for that. Now, I guess I'll give one more tease, since this is pretty much confirmed at this point. We are going to have an interview very soon with a representative from the National Front in France, Marine Le Pen's party, France's nationalist party. And he's a pretty big, high-up individual in their youth movement. So we're going to get to hear from a guy who's working out there, in France, dealing with the nationalist issues that are happening out there, and we'll get his opinion on everything.
It's going to be great.
It's going to be high energy.
Also, I want to mention the next 2 episodes we do. Today is the 17th. A week from today is Christmas Eve. Those episodes will still be going out on Christmas Eve on Christmas Eve and New Year's Eve as regular. However, we are going to be recording those the day prior.
So Saturday. So you'll get those on a Saturday.
So, just warning you all that you'll still get those Saturday night, or we might just upload them on Sunday like normal. But in terms of the news that's covered, might be a day off or so. Yeah. So just, if anything happens on Saturdays, don't expect that to be until the next episode.
But
for the next 2 weeks. Then we're going to go back, once the new year, go back to Sunday shows on Trump.
But listener, if you've made it to this far, you obviously, enjoy our content, and, the schedule is packed. If you've been enjoying these interviews, I have some more lined up that are really good. And, some of the other content, like Hillary Planet Podcasts are planning, coming up into next year, we're going to do some primary shows.
A lot of primary shows. It's going to be a good year next year. And, I'm already excited for the rest of the stuff this month. So, with that said, I just want to say thank you for listening, and have a good one. Goodbye, everybody.
Goodbye.